On the night of our 7th wedding anniversary, I found a strange man's ring inside Lu Ruyan's bag. That same night, the system of her lover, Chun Li's company, crashed and confidential documents were leaked. The next day, intimate photos of Lu Ruyan went viral across the internet. She screamed as she smashed her phone. "Qiguan Jie, you're insane." Later, Chun Li went bankrupt and jumped to his death. Lu Ruyan knelt in the rain, begging for my mercy. I lifted her chin and chuckled softly. Guess who's next? Outside the window, the last remnants of the setting sun were swallowed by the gray-blue evening mist. The main lights in the living room were off. Only a warm yellow wall lamp in the entryway cast a small halo of light. The television was on, and a finance news anchor was articulating the news of Li Feng Technologies' successful new round of financing with perfect diction. The flickering light from the screen played across Qiguan Jie's expressionless face. He raised his wrist to check his watch. 7:03 p.m. His phone screen was blank, no new notifications. Their 7th anniversary. A rich aroma wafted from the kitchen. The premium marbled steak he had left work early to buy was now sizzling in the pan. The scent of searing fat mixed with rosemary, dominating the entire space. Beside it, deep ruby red wine had been breathing in the decanter, flanked by 2 wine glasses polished to a crystal shine. Finally, the sound of a key turning in the lock echoed, brisk, even a little cheerful. The door opened, and Lu Ruyan walked in, wrapped in the cool air of early autumn and a faint scent of perfume that did not belong to her. She looked exceptionally radiant today. Her slightly curled long hair draped lazily over her shoulders, her cheeks flushed with a healthy post-exercise glow, and she wore a newly purchased beige cashmere coat that accentuated the slender curve of her neck. "Honey." Her voice was sweet as honey, breathless with a hint of coquettishness. "Did you wait long?" "Something came up at the office. A difficult client kept me until now." As she bent down to change her shoes, she placed an exquisite paper bag on the entryway console with a soft thud. "Here, a present for you." Qiguan Jie leaned out from the kitchen, his face instantly forming a gentle smile, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes smoothing out, just like any ordinary husband waiting for his wife to come home. "I'm just glad you're back. Dinner was just served." What kind of client was so difficult today? He walked over naturally and took the coat she had removed, his fingers inadvertently brushing against the soft skin on the side of her neck. Beneath his fingertips, he felt a small, abnormal patch of slightly raised roughness. He didn't pause for a second. His smile remained warm, as if he were simply straightening her collar. Yet his gaze, like a precision probe, instantly locked onto a faint pink mark hurriedly concealed with foundation, hidden just below her ear, near the hairline. A fresh hickey, bearing the mark of predation. Oh, nouveau riche guy in construction materials. Totally tacky, and he kept dragging his feet on the terms. Lu Ruyan answered dismissively as she slipped into comfortable slippers, her eyes drifting toward the dining room. "Wow, smells amazing. Steak? Honey, you're the best." Like a bird returning to its nest, she fluttered lightly toward the dining table, completely oblivious to Qiguan Jie hanging up her coat. Holding the coat that still held her body heat and the scent of a stranger's perfume, Qiguan Jie walked to the coat rack by the door. As he hung up the coat, he casually picked up the designer handbag she had left on the console. The bag was light. It didn't feel like it held documents or a laptop. "Sweetie, keys are in the usual spot." His back was to her as he spoke with a smile, but his fingers, seemingly possessing a will of their own, darted into an inconspicuous pocket within the bag's lining. His fingertips grazed a small, cold, hard object. A ring. He hooked it out and concealed it in his palm. The cold metal pressed against his skin. By the dim light of the hallway sconce, he opened his hand to take a look. A man's ring, a plain platinum band. Engraved on the inside was a row of tiny, yet blindingly piercing letters. L and C. L for Lu, C for Chun. Chun Li of Li Feng Technology. The triumphant face on the TV screen instantly superimposed itself over the cold ring. It felt as though an invisible hand had ruthlessly gripped his heart, then plunged it into an icy abyss. The sudden, sharp sense of suffocation nearly made him black out. Blood rushed to his head, only to freeze solid a second later. Something within his chest shattered, detonating in a silent explosion. Yet, not a muscle on his face moved. Even when Lu Ruyin turned to look at him in confusion, he managed to perfectly curl the corners of his lips into a smile of indulgent resignation. Leaving things all over the place again, he said in a relaxed tone, laced with mild reproach. He walked over and, using the hand clutching the ring, naturally brushed the spot on her neck where he had accidentally rubbed off the foundation. His fingertips deftly grazed the edge of the hickey, wiping away the last of the concealer to reveal the suggestive red mark beneath in stark clarity. "Look, the powder has rubbed off." His voice was deep and gentle. The pad of his finger brushed against her skin, the motion intimate, as if he were flirting. Only he knew that the skin beneath his touch was currently making his stomach churn with a cold nausea. Lu Ruyin's body stiffened imperceptibly for a second. She subconsciously raised a hand to cover the side of her neck, but Qiguan Jie had already withdrawn his hand, smoothly wrapping his arm around her waist to guide her toward the dining table. "You must be starving, right? Let's eat. It won't taste as good if it gets cold." He pulled out a chair and thoughtfully seated her. Lu Ruyin seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The bright smile returned to her face as she picked up her knife and fork, enthusiastically cutting into the steak on her plate. Qiguan Jie sat down opposite her. He picked up the decanter and slowly poured the deep crimson liquid into the goblet in front of her, then into his own. The wine swirled in the glass, looking like viscous blood. "Here," he said, raising his glass. His smile was warm, but the depths of his eyes were a bottomless, freezing pool. "Happy 7th anniversary, Ruyin." The crisp sound of clinking glasses rang out with unusual clarity in the quiet dining room. Lu Ruyin tilted her head back and took a large sip, sighing with satisfaction. "It's so good. You always pick the best wines, hubby." She cut a small piece of steak and put it in her mouth, chewing with bright eyes. It's cooked perfectly. Your cooking is getting better and better, hubby." Qiguan Jie also cut a small piece of steak and placed it into his mouth with deliberate slowness. The rich aroma of the fat from the premium beef melted on the tip of his tongue. It should have been the ultimate enjoyment, but in that moment, it tasted like chewing wax. He looked at the woman smiling beautifully across from him. He looked at the kiss mark on the side of her neck, uncovered like a provocation. He looked at her eyes, narrowed in satisfaction from the food and wine. He looked at the wedding ring on her ring finger, the one he had personally placed there all those years ago, which now seemed incredibly ironic. The scent of the unfamiliar perfume on her was like countless fine needles, stabbing into his nose and piercing his brain. He raised his glass and took another sip. The cold liquid slid down his throat, yet it ignited a cold flame within his chest, a flame named destruction. He chewed the beef in his mouth, his movements elegant, his gaze resting calmly on Lu Ruyin's face. "I'm glad you like it." He smiled, his voice mellow and gentle, like a lover's whisper. "In the future, I'll make sure it's even more unforgettable." Lu Ruyin, completely oblivious, remained immersed in the food and the atmosphere of the anniversary. Smiling, she cut another piece of steak. "You're the best, hubby." Qiguan Jie lowered his lashes, concealing the surging dark storm in his eyes that threatened to swallow everything. The cold men's ring in his palm was growing scorching hot from his grip. The painstakingly prepared 7th anniversary dinner ended in a bizarre atmosphere, tender on the surface, but with turbulent undercurrents beneath. Lu Ruyin seemed to be in an excellent mood. She even volunteered to clear the dishes. Qiguan Jie sat on the living room sofa, idly flipping through a financial magazine. Lu Ruyin walked out of the kitchen, wiping her hands. Her face showed a hint of fatigue, but her eyes were still bright. "Hubby, I'm going to take a shower. I'm dead tired today." Go ahead." Qiguan Jie looked up and gave her an understanding smile. "I've already run the bath for you." Lu Ruyin was slightly surprised, followed by a sweet, playful complaint. "Oh my, you're always so thoughtful." She walked over and leaned down to peck him on the cheek, leaving behind a warm, soft sensation and that lingering perfume scent that made Qiguan Jie want to vomit. He watched her back as she walked into the master bathroom. The door closed gently, and soon the sound of splashing water could be heard from within. The smile on Qiguan Jie's face vanished instantly without a trace. He stood up abruptly, moving so fast he created a gust of wind. He took a few strides to the entryway, picked up Lu Ruyan's designer handbag, and reopened the hidden compartment. It was empty. He carefully checked the other pockets. Aside from lipstick, a powder compact, and car keys, there was nothing else. That ring was the only piece of material evidence. He walked back to the living room and stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the city lights shone brilliantly, and the traffic flowed in streams, weaving an illusion of prosperity. He opened his palm. Under the indoor lights, the cold platinum ring reflected a hard, chilly glint. The small inscription inside, L and C, looked like two poison-dipped daggers. Elise, Lu Ruyan, and Chun-Li. The initials of that adulterous pair felt like the most vicious of curses in that moment, carved into the cold metal, and carved into his very flesh and blood. 7 years of marriage, countless days and nights of warmth. The sturdy fortress he thought he had built was, in the eyes of others, nothing more than a scrap of paper that could be pierced with a single poke. He, Qiguan Jie, a man who had clawed his way up from the bottom of the financial world for years, who, though not immensely wealthy, had established a firm foothold through his own capability, had turned into the biggest joke of all, by his most trusted wife and the promising young talent he admired most, working hand in hand to crown him with a hat so green it practically glowed. The icy flame in his chest burned hotter and hotter, searing his internal organs, bringing a pain bordering on suffocation, yet strangely mixed with a trembling thrill. Anger, humiliation, the sense of betrayal. These surging negative emotions, under the catalyst named revenge, fermented and expanded madly, finally condensing into an unprecedented, icy resolve. He would not question them angrily anymore, nor would he roar hysterically like a loser. Those reactions were too low-class, too easy on them. What he wanted was destruction. Thorough, absolute destruction that left no room for escape. He would make this adulterous pair, who trampled on his dignity and defiled his marriage, pay a price they could not bear. He would personally grind everything they took pride in a fine powder. Qiguan Jie walked to the study and locked the door from the inside. He turned on the computer, the cold light of the screen illuminating his expressionless face. He clicked open an encrypted folder. Inside lay things he had accumulated over the years using his position and some gray connections from his early days. Dirt that could ruin reputations, secret commercial intelligence channels, contact information for top hackers who only cared about money, and even details on a few fringe characters who specialized in dirty work. These were hidden lines he had carefully sealed away in the past, never intending to use. Trump cards he had reserved for himself in case of a desperate dead end. He never expected that today they would be revealed in this manner. He clicked on a hacker avatar labeled Spider. A chat box popped up. Qiguan Jie's fingers flew across the keyboard, every character carrying a chilling intent to kill. Target, Lifeng Technology Core Server. Requirement, highest privilege implantation, backdoors fully open. Action, copy all core R&D data, financial reports, undisclosed business plans, client confidential information. Execution, pack everything, send anonymously to the CSRC, Tax Bureau, AIC, and their 3 biggest competitors' email addresses. Addendum, create illusion of system crash, paralyze for at least 48 hours. Deadline tonight. Payment, triple. The message was sent, and almost immediately, the other party replied with a single word. Received. Concise, efficient, ruthless. Just like Qiguan Jie's mood at this moment. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The ghostly light of the computer screen reflected on his angular side profile. Half in the light, half hidden in heavy shadow, like a dormant demon. The study was terrifyingly quiet, save for the low hum of the computer fan. Time ticked by second. He didn't know how long had passed. Maybe half an hour, maybe longer. There was a soft knock on the study door. Lu Ruyan stood at the doorway, carrying the steam of a bath and the sweet scent of shower gel. Her hair was wet and loose, and she wore a silk nightgown that outlined her graceful figure. Hubby, her voice was soft and sticky, holding a hint of lazy seduction. Are you busy? It's very late. Jia opened his eyes. The ice in their depths melted instantly, replaced by just the right amount of gentleness and apology. He quickly switched the computer screen, closing the encrypted folder interface. The desktop returned to his standard landscape wallpaper. Just handling some work emails. I'll be done soon. He stood up and walked to the door, naturally wrapping his arm around her waist, his fingertips feeling the warm, smooth skin beneath the nightgown. This touch, which once fascinated him, now only triggered a wave of physiological disgust. He forcibly suppressed the churning feeling, lowered his head, and kissed the top of her hair, which smelled of shampoo. His movements remained gentle. You go to sleep first. I'll take a shower and join you. Hurry up. Lu Ruyan tipped her head back and gave him a charming smile, her eyes flirting. Watching her retreating figure heading towards the bedroom, the gentleness on Jia's face froze instantly. He closed the door and sat back down in front of the computer. In the bottom right corner of the screen, an inconspicuous icon of an encrypted communication app was flashing madly. He clicked it open. Spider had sent a new message, accompanied by a screenshot of a progress bar. First layer firewall breached. Acquiring target server architecture map. The progress bar was advancing slowly but firmly. Jia picked up the cold platinum wedding ring from the desk and slowly rotated it in his fingertips. The cold glint of the metal was reflected in his bottomless eyes, like 2 points of ghostly fire in the dark. He picked up his phone and opened an encrypted photo album. Stored inside were several photos of Lu Ruyan. Her languid look at home wearing sexy sleepwear. A seductive moment, soaking in the bathtub with only her shoulders and collarbone exposed, and even an extremely private profile shot taken secretly while she was sound asleep. These photos used to be his treasured private intimacies. Now, however, they had become the deadliest of weapons. He selected the bathtub photo, cropping it to show only the section from shoulder to collarbone, glistening with water droplets and heavy with suggestive ambiguity. He then selected the profile shot of her sleeping face, the lighting dim and imbued with a fragile beauty. Then he opened an image processing software and began to operate it with practiced ease. Superimposing the two photos in a specific way, blurring edges, adjusting light and shadow. Soon, a brand new intimate photo with a visually striking impact was generated. The woman in the photo had her face cleverly obscured by light and shadow, possessing a hazy beauty that invited imagination. Yet, anyone familiar with Lu Ruyan's physical features, such as Chun-Li, would absolutely recognize the distinctive lines of her shoulder and collarbone at a glance. He stared at the composite photo on the screen, a counterfeit image sufficient to destroy a woman's purity, his eyes as cold as if he were looking at a piece of worthless trash. Then, he opened another chat window with Spider. Job number 2. Photo processed. Targets. The 3 largest domestic anonymous gossip forums, all mainstream social platforms, Weibo, WeChat, Douyin, Xiaohongshu, and the city's local lifestyle community apps. Content. Photo attached. Headline. Financial upstart Chun Li's secret lover exposed. Shocking content. A married woman. Requirements. 5 a.m. Synchronized push across the entire web. By top 10 trending searches. Maintained for at least 24 hours. Direct paid trolls to focus attacks on the woman for cheating and being a slut. Related tags. Hashtag Leafing Tech Scandal. Hashtag Chunli Lover. Time limit. As usual. Payment. As usual. Triple. Message sent. Almost immediately, the other side replied. Received. Material downloaded. Servers ready. 5 a.m. Punctual detonation. Having done all this, Jia let out a long, silent, heavy breath. The cold flame in his chest did not subside. Instead, it burned even more fiercely, bringing a near-morbid excitement and thrill. He turned off the computer, stood up, and walked into the bathroom. Icy water surged from the shower head, washing over his naked body. The water was cold, stinging his skin with pain, yet could not extinguish the hellfire of revenge in his heart. He tilted his head back, letting the water batter his cheeks, eyes tightly closed. The mirror reflected his blurred silhouette, water droplets sliding down his taut muscle lines. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at himself in the mirror. Those eyes were pitch black, roiling deep within with an undercurrent capable of devouring everything. No trace of his past gentleness or peace could be found. Only absolute ruthlessness and an impending storm. The icy water continued to flush over his body until his skin flushed a numb red. Only then did Qiguan Jie turn off the shower. The steamy mist in the bathroom blurred the mirror surface. He casually wiped away a small patch, revealing a wet face with eyes sharp as knives. He dried his body and changed into clean pajamas, his movements steady, betraying not a single excess emotion. Pushing open the bathroom door, only a dim bedside lamp was lit in the master bedroom. Lu Rian was already asleep, curled up on one side of the large bed, breathing evenly. The warm yellow light outlined her gentle sleeping face. Long eyelashes cast a small shadow beneath her eyes, looking quiet and harmless. Qiguan Jie stood by the bed, looking down at her imperiously. His gaze swept over her smooth shoulders exposed outside the thin duvet, swept over the hickey on the side of her neck that had faded significantly, yet remained blindingly piercing. Just a few hours ago, this body might have been writhing under another man. His eyes were cold, void of anger, holding only a deep, icy scrutiny, as if looking at a piece of porcelain about to be thoroughly shattered. He lifted the duvet and lay down beside her, his movements light so as not to disturb her. The mattress dipped slightly. Lu Rian murmured unconsciously in her sleep, habitually nuzzling towards him, seeking a familiar body warmth. Her arm draped over him, carrying the scent of body wash. Qiguan Jie's body tensed imperceptibly for an instant. Then he forced himself to relax. He didn't push her away, nor did he respond. He simply lay flat, eyes open, gazing at the blurred contours of light and shadow on the ceiling. Time crawled slowly in the dead silence. The breathing of the woman beside him was clearly audible, her warm body pressed tightly against him, yet made him feel as though he were holding a block of ice. The phone screen on the nightstand lit up silently. He immediately reached out and grabbed it. It was an encrypted message from Spider. Core data packaging complete. Anonymous email sent. System crash countdown, 10 minutes. Qiguan Jie's eyes flickered briefly in the darkness, then dimmed, returning to a deathly stillness. He put down his phone and closed his eyes as if he were truly preparing to sleep. 10 minutes felt as long as a century. Suddenly, a nearly imperceptible vibration traveled through the mattress. Immediately following it, through the gap in the master bedroom curtains, a faint, unusual light seemed to flicker in the distance toward a specific part of the city before fading back into the dark. It was fleeting, almost making one believe it was an illusion. But Qiguan Jie knew it was no illusion. The headquarters of Li Feng Technology should have plunged into chaos and darkness by now. The core server clusters were thoroughly paralyzed by a preset logic bomb. All critical calculations, transactions, and data synchronizations currently in progress were instantly severed. The central nervous system of the entire company had been severed with a single stroke. He could even picture Chun Li's face, always wearing a hint of arrogance, now likely twisted in a mix of shock and rage. Woken from a deep sleep by an emergency call, listening to the incoherent report of the technical director, staring at the countless glaring red alerts representing server status on the monitoring screens. That meticulously prepared business plan, enough to double Li Feng Technology's valuation, was likely lying in the inboxes of the Securities Commission and competitors at this very moment, exuding a tempting yet fatal aura. A cold surge of satisfaction quietly spread up his spine. This was merely the appetizer. He picked up his phone again and set a vibrating alarm for 4:50 a.m. Then, he turned onto his side, facing Lu Ruyan's sleeping form. He extended his arm and, with a posture bordering on tenderness, gently drew her into his embrace. Her body was soft and warm, carrying the scent of deep sleep. Qiguan Jie rested his chin on the crown of her head, inhaling the lingering scent of shampoo in her hair, yet his gaze bypassed her shoulder, casting itself into the boundless darkness outside the window. His arms held her, as if she were his most treasured possession, yet his eyes looked as though he were embracing a cold corpse. In the darkness, the corners of his mouth curved up soundlessly, At 4:50 a.m., the phone vibrated punctually under Chi Guan-jie's pillow. He opened his eyes instantly, his gaze clear without a trace of drowsiness. In his arms, Lu Ruyan was sleeping soundly, breathing evenly. He extracted his arm with extreme caution, like dismantling a sophisticated bomb, not disturbing her in the slightest. He rose soundlessly, picked up his phone, walked barefoot out of the bedroom, and gently pulled the door shut. The living room was pitch black, save for the unextinguished city lights in the distance, penetrating the floor-to-ceiling windows and casting vague patches of light onto the floor. He walked to the study, locked the door, and turned on the computer. The cold glow of the screen once again illuminated his impassive face. He opened an encrypted communication app. The avatar for Spider was flashing. Photo push ready. All platform channels clear. Bot accounts activated. Related topics preheating. Countdown. 9 minutes 58 seconds. 57 seconds. Chi Guan-jie did not reply. Leaning back in his chair, he opened a special surveillance app on his phone. The screen split into several small windows, clearly displaying living room, empty, lit only by the faint glow of wall lamps. Master bedroom door, tightly closed. Entryway, silent. Study door, also tightly closed. Lu Ruyan was still fast asleep. Good. He switched back to the computer screen, staring quietly at the ticking countdown numbers. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Time 0. Chi Guan-jie's fingertip tapped lightly on the mouse, issuing a silent command. Detonate. Almost in the same instant, he felt he could hear the hum of countless servers deep within the internet spinning at high speed, as infinite streams of preset information broke through the dam like a flood, rushing toward every designated outlet. He quickly opened the web pages of several mainstream social platforms and anonymous forums. Page refresh. Explosive. Hashtag financial circle upstart Chun Li's secret lover exposed. Shocking scale. Married woman. Huh. Hashtag Li Feng Tech CEO late night rendezvous with wife. Bath photos leaked. Boiling. Hashtag pics with truth. Chun Li's lover identified. Suspected to be a married woman. Several glaring scarlet tags. Explosive, hot, boiling, were branded like red-hot irons at the very top of the trending lists on every major platform. Clicking on the topic, that meticulously processed and highly suggestive intimate photo stood blatantly in the first spot. Although the photo had undergone blurring and lighting adjustments, Lu Ruyan's signature shoulder and necklines, her collarbone, and even a tiny mole on her earlobe were clearly distinguishable. The comments section was already swamped by bot accounts and netizens scenting blood. Holy shit. That body. That vibe. Boss Chun is one lucky guy. Looks so slutty. Cheating when she has a husband. How cheap can you get? A married woman? Damn. Chun-Li has some unique tastes. Li Feng Tech. The one that just got funding. The CEO plays this hard. Isn't he afraid the investors will pull out? Asking for HD and censored. Asking for a face reveal. Feels sorry for her husband. He's getting cuckolded hard. Who is this woman? Has anyone docked her yet? Hashtag Li Feng Tech scandal hashtag with such a morally bankrupt boss. Can the company be any good? The stock's gonna hit the limit down, right? Hashtag Chun-Li mistress hashtag slut. Shameless. Filthy language, malicious speculation, schadenfreude. Like a tide of filth, they instantly swamped the topic. The spearhead, guided by paid trolls, pointed precisely at cheating, married woman, and slut. Every word was like a poison-dipped whip, lashed viciously against Lu Ruyan's name. Though not explicitly named, the implications were crystal clear. The associated hashtags hashtag Li Feng Tech scandal hashtag and hashtag Chun-Li mistress hashtag climbed the charts rapidly, nailing Chun-Li and his company firmly to the pillar of shame. Chi Guan-jie scrolled through these malicious comments expressionlessly, his eyes as cold as if he were watching a farce that had nothing to do with him. He even opened the most popular local lifestyle app, Neighborhood Circle. The pinned post was, glaringly, that same photo and a sensational headline. The comments below were even more unbridled, filled with local dialect curses and insider revelations, as if the entire city knew in an instant that Lu Ruyan was a cheap slut-stealing man. Watching the surging malice on the screen, He seemed to see the world Lu Ruyan would face upon waking, a world that would tear her apart completely and trample her into the mud. Just then, in the master bedroom surveillance feed, the screen of the phone Lu Ruyan had placed on the nightstand suddenly lit up. The harsh white light was conspicuously bright in the dim room. A call. Then another. The screen flashed frantically. The incoming call notifications came one after another like death warrants. WeChat and SMS notification sounds also rang out densely, vibrating against the tabletop with a buzz. On the bed, Lu Ruyan was finally woken by the immense commotion. She groaned groggily and reached out for her phone. When her fingertips touched the frantically vibrating device, she seemed to freeze for a moment. She propped herself up halfway, looking at the screen with sleepy eyes. The next second, the surveillance camera clearly captured the drastic change in her expression. It was an expression mixing confusion, bewilderment, and disbelief, finally morphing into absolute terror. Her eyes snapped open wide, her pupils contracting sharply from extreme shock, and her face instantly drained of color under the pale light of the screen, turning deathly gray. Her hand began to tremble violently and uncontrollably, barely able to hold the phone. She frantically swiped to unlock the screen, seemingly opening a social media app. Ah! A scream, shrill and distorted, suddenly pierced the silence of the early morning. The sound was filled with disbelief, terror, breakdown, and despair, sharp enough to tear through one's eardrums. Followed immediately by a dull thud. She hurled the phone away as if it were a hot potato, smashing it against the wall before it bounced onto the carpet. The screen shattered instantly, spiderweb cracks spreading across it, but the harsh light stubbornly remained on, illuminating her face, which was twisted in extreme horror. As if all her bones had been removed, she collapsed onto the bed, hands gripping her hair tightly, body shaking violently, her throat emitting raspy, tuneless sobs like a dying beast. In the study, Chiguan Jie quietly watched this scene through the monitor. He picked up the cup of water on the desk that had long gone cold and took a sip. The cold water slid down his throat, yet it gave him a strange sense of comfort. He stood up, adjusted his soft pajamas, and put that mask back on his face, gentle, with just the right amount of worry. He opened the study door and walked calmly toward the master bedroom. The moment he pushed the door open, a pungent smell of perfume mixed with the aura of a mental breakdown hit him in the face. Lu Ruyan was curled up amidst the messy covers, like a butterfly ravaged by a violent storm, shivering. Her face was streaked with tears and mucus, her carefully applied makeup smeared into a dirty mess. On the floor lay the phone, its screen shattered but still displaying that lewd photo. Hearing the door open, Lu Ruyan snapped her head up. The moment she saw Chiguan Jie, a frantic light burst in her eyes, like a drowning person clutching at driftwood, only to be immediately swallowed by deeper terror. Hubby! Hubby! She practically scrambled off the bed on all fours, pouncing at Chiguan Jie's feet. She hugged his legs tightly, her voice hoarse and broken, filled with desperate sobbing. It wasn't me. Those photos aren't me. They're photoshopped. Someone is trying to frame me. You have to believe me. Believe me. Her body trembled like a leaf in the autumn wind, her tears and mucus rubbing onto his clean pajama pants. Chiguan Jie looked down at her. His eyes were calm and rippleless, holding even a trace of imperceptible pity, as if he were watching an absurd tragedy. He let her hug his legs and wail, neither bending down nor pushing her away. He slowly paced to the small bar by the floor-to-ceiling window, where the bottle of red wine he had opened last night sat with a decanter. He picked up the decanter and slowly poured the deep red liquid into a tall wine glass. His movements were elegant and unhurried. The crimson liquid swirled in the glass, like viscous blood. Lu Ruyan's heart-wrenching pleas continued behind him. Husband, say something. Believe me. Someone framed me. It was Chun Li. It must be that bastard Chun Li who offended someone and dragged me into it. Solbi, what am I going to do? It's all over. Chiguan Jie lifted the wine glass. Facing the city outside, still immersed in the night, yet for some, already shattering apart, he gently swirled the wine. The light from the cracked phone screen reflected on his calm, impassive profile. He turned around, facing his wife who was prostrate on the ground in collapsed despair, and leisurely took a sip of the cold red wine. The mellow aroma spread through his mouth, carrying a hint of bitter aftertaste. He looked at Lu Ruyan's face, which had been thoroughly destroyed by fear, and the corners of his lips slowly curled into an extremely shallow, yet ultimately freezing arc. "This is just the beginning, wife." His voice wasn't loud, arguably even gentle, yet it was like a knife quenched in ice, clearly piercing through Lu Ruyan's wailing and stabbing ruthlessly into her heart. Lu Ruyan's begging came to an abrupt halt. She jerked her head up. The mix of tears, stains, and terror on her face instantly solidified, turning into a look of sheer, ghostly horror. She stared dead at Qi Guanjie, as if seeing the man she had shared a bed with for 7 years clearly for the very first time. Qi Guanjie brought the glass to his lips and took another sip. The cold liquid slid down his throat, but ignited a carnival named revenge in his blood. On the horizon outside the window, a cold, pale white light began to appear. A new day had begun. Lu Ruyan collapsed on the floor like a pile of mud. Qi Guanjie's airy comment, "This is just the beginning," was like a bomb thrown into a stagnant pool, setting off terrifying, tumultuous waves in her already shattered mental world. She lifted her head, looking through blurred, teary eyes at the man standing high above her, methodically savoring his red wine. That familiar face was now as strange as an evil spirit that had crawled out of hell. It was you." She squeezed broken syllables from her throat, every word dripping with blood. "The photos. You did it. Why?" "Qi Guanjie. Why?" The final question used up all her remaining strength, sharp enough to almost crack her voice. Qi Guanjie swirled the dark red liquid in his glass, the cold arc at the corner of his mouth deepening slightly. "Why?" As if he had heard an incredibly interesting question, he slowly paced in front of her and crouched down. The action should have been intimate, yet it carried a creepy, oppressive pressure. He reached out, his cold fingertips suddenly gripping her chin, forcing her to look up and meet his bottomless eyes directly. There was no anger in that gaze, only a pure, icy scrutiny, like assessing a defective product about to be dismantled. "Wife," his voice was low and mellow, like a lover's whisper, yet laced with deadly poison. "That LNC ring in your back. It hurt my hand all night." His thumb ground forcefully over the hickey on the side of her neck, one that had already faded but was still an eyesore. The force was so great that she hissed in pain. Lu Ruyan's body began to tremble violently, her pupils dilating again from extreme fear. The ring. He saw it. He knows everything. 7 years. Qi Guanjie's voice was light, but every word was a knife slicing at her heart. "I cooked for you, waited for you to come home, and planned our future like a fool. And you?" In Chun-Li's bed, planning how to keep this green hat firmly on my head. He suddenly released his hand, leaving clear fingerprints on Lu Ruyan's chin instantly. He stood up and looked down at her. The last trace of feigned warmth in his eyes vanished, leaving only naked, frozen hatred and the thrill of impending destruction. "So don't ask why. If you must ask, it's because you and he both deserve to die." Lu Ruyan went completely limp, losing even the strength to cry. All that remained were desperate whimpers and uncontrollable trembling. On the floor, the phone screen glowed stubbornly. That damned photo and the torrent of vicious comments beneath it were like countless red-hot needles, repeatedly piercing her nerves. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. The doorbell rang out, urgent and frenzied, like drumbeats of doom. The sound tore through the deathly silence of despair filling the room. Lu Ruyan jerked violently like a startled rabbit, looking toward the door in terror. Qi Guanjie, however, acted as if he hadn't heard a thing. With perfect composure, he walked over to the security monitor in the entryway. The screen was crowded with reporters shoulder to shoulder with cameras and lenses of all sizes, along with several influencers holding up phones for live streams. Their faces wore expressions of excitement and voyeuristic curiosity, like sharks that had caught the scent of blood. Camera flashes flickered madly through the door panels. TSK, news travels fast. Qi Guanjie's tone was bland, laced with a faint trace of mockery. He pressed the intercom button. Mr. Chiguan, we're from the City Express. Do you have any response to the photos and rumors circulating online regarding your wife? Mr. Chiguan, is the woman in the viral photo your wife, Ms. Lu Ruyan? Were you aware of this? Mr. Chiguan, is Chun Li from Li Feng Technology the third party? Will you be taking legal action? Mr. Chiguan, please say something. A cacophony of noise instantly flooded the interior, like a flock of raucous crows. Chiguan Jie remained expressionless. Speaking into the microphone, his voice was terrifyingly calm, yet carried just the right amount of exhaustion and grief. Friend from the press, this is a family matter between my wife and me. My wife is currently emotionally unstable, and we both need space to handle this. Please leave, or I will call the police immediately. With that, he cut the connection and turned off the visual display. Outside the door, silence fell instantly, though the strobe-like flickering of camera flashes was still faintly visible through the cracks. He turned and looked down at Lu Ruyan, who was shivering in a heap on the floor. His gaze was indifferent. See that? Is this the thrill you wanted? How does it feel? Lu Ruyan curled up, burying her face deep in her knees, letting out a muffled, despairing wail. She was finished. Her reputation, her life, everything she had painstakingly built, it was all finished. And this was only the beginning. The following days were an endless cycle of hell for Lu Ruyan. The storm on the internet did not subside. Instead, it intensified. Her identity was stripped bare by omnipotent netizens. Her name, her workplace, a high-end design studio, her university, and even the addresses of the gym and beauty salon she frequented were all exposed. Her Weibo, Zaya Hongshu, and other social media accounts were instantly flooded with filth. Her inbox was bursting with unspeakable abuse and threats. The studio's phone rang off the hook until her boss, under immense pressure, tactfully notified her that she was on indefinite leave. She didn't dare go out. Whenever she went near a window, she could feel the prying eyes of reporters and thrill-seekers camped out downstairs. The landline at home and her backup mobile phone became hotlines. There were calls from concerned relatives and friends asking after her, actually fishing for gossip, media outlets refusing to give up, and even strangers calling themselves crusaders of justice to directly scream that she was a whore, a slut, and a cancer destroying other people's families. She was in a daze, unable to eat. In just a few days, she lost so much weight she looked skeletal. Her eyes were sunken and unfocused. She tried to explain to Chiguan Jie, to cry, to beg, and even to curse hysterically. But Chiguan Jie's reaction was colder than ice. He went to work and came home as usual. He brought her meals, and even when she broke down weeping, he would hand her a glass of warm water. But he never responded to any of her justifications or pleas. There was no anger in his eyes, no sorrow, only a thorough indifference and scrutiny that chilled her to the marrow. It was as if she were merely a piece of garbage awaiting final disposal. The more he acted this way, the more the fear in Lu Ruyan's heart swelled, threatening to swallow her whole. She knew he definitely had more moves to play. When he said it was just the beginning, it was no empty threat. Meanwhile, Chun Li's life was an even greater living hell than Lu Ruyan's. The headquarters of Li Feng Technology, which just days ago had been brimming with the joy of successful financing, was now shrouded in gloom and a deathly silence. The servers were barely restored after crashing for 48 hours, but the catastrophic consequences of the core data leak were only just beginning to emerge. The Securities Regulatory Commission sent a sternly worded inquiry demanding an explanation regarding the leaked business plan and potential false statements. An inspection team from the Tax Bureau moved directly into the company, sealing all financial ledgers to investigate suspicions of massive tax evasion. The Administration for Market Regulation opened a case to investigate unfair competition and infringement of trade secrets. The deadliest blow was that the core technical parameters and undisclosed R&D roadmaps the company relied on for survival had been anonymously sent to its three largest competitors. Like hungry wolves scenting blood, the rivals immediately launched ferocious patent attacks and a market siege. Several major orders Li Feng Technology had just secured instantly fell through. Investors who had once flocked to the company withdrew their capital in droves. The stock price crashed like an avalanche, hitting the downward limit at the opening bell for days in a row, with over 70% of the market value evaporating. Chun-Li shut himself inside his massive top-floor office, the curtains drawn tight to block out the blinding sunlight and prying eyes from outside. On the expensive mahogany desk, the ashtray was piled high with twisted cigarette butts. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and his expensive suit hung wrinkled on his frame. He had long since lost his former air of high-spirited confidence. On the massive screen opposite his desk was the graph of the company's precipitous stock plunge. That glaring green was like a blunt knife, repeatedly sawing at his nerves. Useless. A bunch of useless idiots. He grabbed the crystal paperweight from his desk and hurled it violently at the closed office door, creating a deafening bang. The secretary, standing guard outside, shuddered in fright. The CTO, general counsel, CFO. One by one, they stood before him, heads hung low, reporting even worse news. Banks calling in loans, suppliers demanding payment, the core team being poached by competitors with high salaries and looming class action lawsuits. Investigate. Find out who did this. Get to the bottom of it. Chun-Li roared like a trapped beast, his eyes red. The server intrusion. The photo leak. It has to be the same person. The same person. Mr. Chun. The CTO's voice trembled. Their methods are too sophisticated. They use the ghost protocol found only among top-tier hackers. It wiped every trace. There's simply no way to track them. Useless. Chun-Li slammed his fist onto the table again, his knuckles instantly splitting and oozing blood. He gasped for air like a dying fish. Just then, his personal phone began to vibrate frantically. The name Lu Ruyan flashed on the screen. Clutching the phone like a drowning man grasping at a straw, he answered, his voice hoarse. Hello, Ruyan. Are you okay? The thing's online. Chun-Li, you bastard. Instead of her usual gentle whispers, what came through the phone was Lu Ruyan's hysterical, venom-filled screaming and sobbing. It's all you. You ruined me. Qiguan Jie knows. He knows everything. He's taking revenge. He's getting revenge on us. He's crazy. He's going to destroy us all. It's all your fault. Chun-Li's heart sank violently, and a chill shot from the soles of his feet straight to the crown of his head. Qiguan Jie? What did he do? What did he do? Lu Ruyan let out a manic, high-pitched laugh on the other end. He leaked the photos. He crashed the servers. He told me himself. And this is just the beginning. Chun-Li, we're finished. Completely finished. You jinx. You bastard. The phone was slammed shut, leaving only the busy signal. Chun-Li gripped the phone, frozen in place, the color draining instantly from his face. Qiguan Jie? That mild-mannered, harmless-looking man who was just a minor middle manager at a bank? Him? How is that possible? But Lu Ruyan's breakdown-induced screaming and the tragic collapse of his company before his eyes intertwined to form a terrifying, undeniable answer. An icy fear gripped Chun-Li's heart. If it really was Qiguan Jie, a man capable of dismantling his entire technology empire without making a sound, ruining his reputation overnight, and precisely nailing both him and Lu Ruyan to the pillar of shame, then would his revenge stop here? No, impossible. Chun-Li muttered to himself, trying to deny the thought that terrified him. He threw himself at his computer, his trembling fingers typing in Qiguan Jie's name, desperately searching for any information on this husband of his lover, a man he had never once taken seriously. The search results were sparse. A standard resume of a bank employee, a clean social circle, and no unusual records whatsoever. An utterly ordinary middle-class man. The more ordinary and clean he seemed, the more he exuded an unfathomable terror in Chun-Li's eyes at this moment. He snatched the car keys from the desk and bolted out of the office as if fleeing a plague, ignoring his secretary's panicked cries. He had to find Lu Ruyan. He had to find out the truth. What else did Qiguan Jie know? What exactly did he intend to do? The black Porsche sports car shot out of the Li Feng Technology underground garage like an arrow from a bow. Chun-Li's eyes were bloodshot as he floored the accelerator, weaving madly through the light morning traffic. His mind was a chaotic mess. Fear, rage, indignation, and a trace of absurdity all tangled together. Qiguan Jie's nondescript face twisted in his mind into that of a grinning demon. He had to see Lu Ruyan. He had to know what cards Qiguan Jie was holding. His car skidded violently into the underground garage of Lu Ruyan's complex. Chun-Li didn't even wait for the vehicle to come to a complete stop before shoving the door open and bolting out. He knew the way well, charging to the elevator and frantically mashing the up button. The door slid open. He stormed inside and punched in the floor number. The digits climbed steadily. Ding! The doors parted. Chun-Li rushed out, impatient, heading straight for Qiguan Jie's security door. He raised his hand to pound on it. But just as his fist was about to land on the heavy panel, the door was pulled open from the inside. Qiguan Jie stood in the doorway, clad in impeccable dark gray loungewear, a microfiber cloth for his glasses in his hand. His expression was calm, tinged with just the right amount of surprise. He looked as if he were about to leave for work, or perhaps had just seen a guest out. President Chun? Qiguan Jie raised an eyebrow slightly, his tone as bland as if he were greeting a neighbor. A rare guest. What brings you here so early? He unhurriedly put on his polished glasses, his gaze behind the lenses resting calmly on Chun-Li's face, which was twisted with anxiety and rage. Chun-Li froze mid-motion, looking at this composed man who seemed to have everything under control, and contrasting it with the ruin of his own company and his shattered reputation. A surge of vicious anger rushed to his head. Qiguan Jie, did you do this? Chun-Li lost all composure. He grabbed Qiguan Jie by the collar of his loungewear and slammed him hard against the doorframe. His eyes blazed, and his voice was a hoarse roar. The servers, the photos. Was it you? You snake. What are you trying to do? Huh? Despite being pinned by the collar against the frame, Qiguan Jie showed no panic. He didn't even furrow his brow. He simply pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his movements unhurried. President Chun. Qiguan Jie's voice remained steady, even sounding a bit confused. What are you talking about? What servers? What photos? I don't understand. He looked at Chun-Li's face, hideous with rage, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward ever so slightly, revealing a smile that was almost pitying, yet bone-chillingly cold. I'm just an ordinary bank teller. How would I have that kind of power? He spoke slowly, every word like a poison-dipped ice needle, piercing precisely into Chun-Li's rawest nerves. But you, President Chun, you don't look so good. Is the company having trouble? I heard the stock price took a nasty dive. What a pity. You. Chun-Li was driven over the edge by this feigned ignorance and breezy attitude. The last thread of his sanity snapped. He raised his fist, aiming a blow straight at that infuriatingly calm face. Chun-Li, what are you doing? Let go of my husband. A shrill scream erupted from inside the apartment. Lu Ruyan, hair disheveled and looking borderline hysterical, rushed out. Seeing Chun-Li grabbing Qiguan Jie and preparing to strike, she lunged forward in terror, clinging desperately to Chun-Li's raised arm. Get off me, you bitch! Chun-Li, blinded by rage, violently shook his arm free. Lu Ruyan's body, weak from days of poor sleep and little food, couldn't withstand the force of his fury. With a cry, she was flung backward, crashing heavily into the shoe cabinet in the entryway. Thud! A dull impact echoed. Lu Ruyan groaned in pain, curling up on the floor as her forehead instantly began to swell and redden. Ruyan! A look of shock and outrage instantly flashed across Qiguan Jie's face. He wrenched himself free from Chun-Li's grip, or perhaps Chun-Li had loosened his hold at Lu Ruyan's sudden appearance, and darted to her side. He gathered her into his arms, examining the injury on her forehead with evident distress, then glared furiously at Chun-Li. Chun-Li, you've gone too far, barging into my home and assaulting people. Do you think I'm dead? His voice was filled with the righteous anger and protectiveness of a husband, but his eyes swept over Chun-Li with ice-cold detachment. The faint trace of mockery at the corner of his mouth, visible only to Chun-Li, struck like a resounding slap to the face. Chun-Li watched Qiguan Jie protecting Lu Ruyan. He saw Lu Ruyan trembling in Qiguan Jie's arms, looking at him with eyes full of fear and venom. Then he looked back at the undisguised, cold sarcasm deep in Qiguan Jie's eyes. A massive, absurd sense of powerlessness, mingled with absolute terror, seized him instantly. He understood. He finally understood completely. This man in front of him wasn't there to fight him. He was there to watch the show, to watch Chun-Li perform like a clown on the brink of collapse. Watch how he pushes the situation into an even more wretched state with his own hands. He lost. From the very beginning, he had suffered a crushing defeat. He thought he controlled wealth and women, unaware that he had long since fallen into a cold web of destruction meticulously woven by his opponent. Good, good, Qiguan Jie. Chun-Li pointed at Qiguan Jie, his finger trembling violently from extreme anger and fear. His voice was as hoarse as sandpaper rubbing against a rough surface. You are ruthless. You just wait. Just wait. He dared not look into Qiguan Jie's bottomless eyes again, nor did he dare meet Lu Ruyan's venomous gaze. Like a man chased by demons, he spun around and stumbled toward the elevator. His retreating figure was utterly wretched, filled with the madness of a man at the end of his rope. The elevator doors closed, cutting off that suffocating, terrifying atmosphere. At the entryway, the look of shock and rage instantly faded from Qiguan Jie's face, restoring his usual impassive coldness. He let go of Lu Ruyan, allowing her to slide to the floor, where she covered her swollen forehead and sobbed quietly. He straightened the collar Chun-Li had crumpled, walked to the door, and watched the descending numbers on the elevator display, his eyes cold. He took out his phone and dialed a number. The contact was labeled Brother Long. The call connected quickly. A rough, rasping voice thick with the air of the underworld came through. Brother Jie, this early? Did you find work for us? Qiguan Jie's voice was calm and rippleless, as if discussing the weather. Brother Long, take care of someone for me. Chun-Li from Li Feng Tech. He's emotionally unstable right now. He just left my place driving a black Porsche 911, license plate ending in 668. Don't kill him, and don't leave obvious marks. Let him have a good rest for a few days. The price is double what we discussed last time. A rough laugh came from the other end. Brother Jie, you're straightforward. Don't worry, the boys know what they're doing. We guarantee he'll sleep comfortably for a few days, and no one will trace it back. Send me the location. I'll have someone tail him immediately. Good. Qiguan Jie hung up and texted Chun-Li's license plate number, a general direction. Having done all this, he didn't even glance at Lu Ruyan weeping on the floor as he walked straight to the study. The door closed and locked. He turned on his computer and opened a hidden stock trading software. On the screen, the trend chart for Li Feng Tech, ticker LFKJ, remained a desperate, vertical green line plunging downward. It was locked tight at the limit down price, with sell orders piled up like a mountain. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold, pleasurable arc. Was this just the appetizer? No, the main course had only just begun. He moved the mouse, hovering the cursor over the short sell button. In his account, he had long since borrowed a massive amount of LFKJ shares through secret channels. The consecutive limit downs over the past few days had already pushed his floating profits to a terrifying figure. But this wasn't enough. He needed one final strike, a strike that would drive Chun-Li to utter despair. He clicked on the avatar named Spider. Target, LFKJ. Requirement, forge 3 internal documents. Evidence of Chun-Li suspected of embezzling massive public funds and transferring assets. A technical assessment report detailing major security vulnerabilities in Li Feng Tech's core products. Leads linking Chun-Li to overseas money laundering organizations. Send to CSRC Inspection Division, Economic Crime Investigation Corps, Cyberspace Administration, and the inboxes of all institutions holding more than 1% of LFKJ stock. Deadline, before market close today. Payment, as usual, triple. Message sent. Instant reply. Received. Delivered within 2 hours. Qiguan Jie leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The study was very quiet, save for the low hum of the computer fan and the sound of his own steady breathing. He could imagine the nuclear-level chain reaction that would explode when those 3 seamless bombs were precisely delivered to the inboxes of those key departments and major institutions before the market closed. Economic crime investigators launching a probe into Chun-Li personally? The security vulnerability report triggering consumer panic, and even fiercer sell-offs. The money laundering allegations severing any possible hope for financing or restructuring. Li-Feng Tech, along with its once glorious founder Chun Li, would be cast into an abyss of no return. And the mastermind behind it all sat quietly right here, like a cold god controlling a chessboard. A faint, cold, and satisfied smile surfaced on Qi Guanjie's lips. The symphony of destruction was approaching its climax. The study door isolated everything outside, including Lu Rian's suppressed sobbing and the pain of her bruised forehead. To Qi Guanjie, those noises were nothing but irrelevant static in the background. All his senses were focused on the screen before him, focused on that green line of death representing the total collapse of Chun Li's business empire. Spider's efficiency was as high as ever. With half an hour left until market close, the encrypted messaging software flashed. Files delivered to all designated targets. Internal systems of the Economic Crime Investigation Department show that the approval process for opening a case against Chun Li personally has been initiated. Qi Guanjie's fingertips tapped lightly on the desk once, like a conductor striking the final note before arrest. He opened the stock market software. On the LFKJ board, the mountain of sell orders sealing the stock at the limit down price remained immovable. But soon, subtle changes began to appear. Some small sell orders, originally hanging at the limit down price, began to be quietly withdrawn by mysterious funds. Immediately after several massive sell orders, far exceeding the market's normal absorption capacity, crashed onto the limit board like a bursting dam. This was not retail investor behavior. It was the institutions. It was those institutions that had received the bombshell, fleeing in panic at any cost. The limit down seal was smashed through in an instant. LFKJ's stock price, like a condemned building with its final pillar removed, held at the limit down price for a mere few seconds before collapsing with a crash. The green numbers danced madly. -9, 5%, -9, 8%, diving straight down. Panic spread like a plague. More sell orders poured out, a stampede of selling. The stock forums exploded instantly. Holy shit. The limit down is broken. The institutions are running. What happened? Insider news. Run. It's totally collapsing. It's over. Lost everything. In just a few minutes, LFKJ's stock price poured down from the limit down, the drop expanding rapidly to a shocking -15%. It set a record for the stock's largest single-day drop. The trading volume hit historical highs. The wealth of countless retail investors evaporated in an instant. Qi Guanjie quietly watched this brutal scene. On his short-selling account, the number representing profit was soaring wildly at an unprecedented speed. The cold numbers, every minute and every second, spoke of Chun Li's destruction and the thrill of his revenge. Just then, the landline on his desk rang. The caller ID showed Li-Feng Technology, Chun Li office. Qi Guanjie did not pick up immediately. He unhurriedly picked up the coffee beside him, which had long since gone cold, and took a sip. The bitter liquid slid down his throat. The telephone rang stubbornly, like the wailing of a dying man. After ringing a dozen times, only then did he leisurely pick up the receiver. Hello. His voice was steady, betraying no emotion. There was no immediate speech from the other end, only heavy, chaotic breathing like a broken bellows. After several seconds, Chun Li's hoarse, desperate, sobbing voice came through intermittently. In the background, there seemed to be the sound of things smashing and employees screaming in panic. Qi Guanjie. It's you, isn't it? The voice was utterly broken, filled with a madness on the brink of collapse. The files, those files. It was you. You forged them. You want to drive me to death. Qi Guanjie leaned back in his chair, fingers unconsciously twirling his fountain pen, his eyes calmly watching the LFKJ stock line still plummeting on the screen. President Chun, he spoke, his voice still flat and waveless, even carrying a trace of formulaic detachment. You seem to have dialed the wrong number. This is a private residence. Also, what files are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Are you under too much pressure and having some bad hallucinations? I suggest you see a doctor as soon as possible. Bullshit. A hysterical roar from Chun Li came from the other end, accompanied by the loud crash of shattering glass. Qi Guanjie, you devil, you hypocrite. I know it's you. You rat hiding in the sewer. If you have the guts, come at me. Come at me. Chun Li's voice was completely twisted and deformed, filled with extreme fear, rage, and the despair before breakdown. He could feel that invisible net tightening, strangling him until he couldn't breathe. The intervention of the Economic Crime Investigation Department meant his personal assets would be frozen, and he might even face imprisonment. Product security loopholes and suspicion of money laundering were the final straws breaking the company's back. Banks were calling in debts, suppliers were blocking the doors, employees were demanding unpaid wages. Everything he had painstakingly built for years was turning to dust before his eyes at visible speed. And the source of all this was that man on the other end of the phone, whose voice was terrifyingly calm. President Chun, please mind your language. Qi Guanjie's voice turned cold, carrying a trace of imperceptible warning. If you continue this groundless harassment and slander, I will consider calling the police. Also, he paused, his tone carrying a trace of extremely subtle concern, like a venomous snake flicking its tongue. I heard your company's stock price isn't looking too optimistic. Mr. Chun, you'd best worry about yourself. Take care. With that, before Chun Li could react, Qi Guanjie hung up the phone with crisp decisiveness. The beep-beep of the busy signal echoed from the receiver. Inside his office, Chun Li stood frozen amidst the wreckage, clutching the phone that now offered nothing but a busy signal. Fragments of documents, shattered glass, and spilled red wine were scattered across the expensive Persian carpet, mirroring his collapsing world. The muscles on his face twitched violently, and his eyes were unfocused. The last shred of hope and support had been utterly shattered by Qi Guanjie's cold, calm, take care. A beast-like roar of absolute despair burst from the depths of his throat. He violently smashed the phone in his hand against the wall. Then, as if drained of all strength, he slumped into his large executive chair, hands clutching his hair tightly. His body trembled violently, emitting suppressed whimpers like a trapped beast. It was over. Completely over. Qi Guanjie would not let him off. That man intended to crush him thoroughly. A bone-deep chill and despair, like an icy tide, instantly engulfed him. Late night, a torrential downpour. Bean-sized raindrops pounded crazily against every inch of the city, creating a deafening roar. Water flooded the streets. Traffic was scarce. The dim streetlights blurred into hazy halos within the curtain of rain. A black Porsche in 911 sped wildly along the empty, slick streets like an out-of-control beast. Its wheels tore through the standing water, splashing up a wall of water as high as a person. In the driver's seat, Chun Li's eyes were crimson and bloodshot, his face twisted in an expression of mingled madness and despair. He gripped the steering wheel tightly with one hand while clutching a liquor bottle with the other, occasionally throwing his head back to take a large swig of strong alcohol. He had just fled from a completely failed Hongmen banquet, where he had tried to seek final financing. Former partners and investors, after receiving those internal documents, looked at him as if he were a dead man carrying a plague, avoiding him as if their lives depended on it. Every avenue was blocked. All that awaited him was bankruptcy liquidation, massive debt, and cold prison bars. Qi Guanjie, I'm going to kill you. Kill you. Chun Li screamed at the blurry rain outside the windshield, his voice drowned out by the roar of the engine and the rain. Alcohol and despair had completely burned away his sanity. He had only one thought: find Qi Guanjie and drag him down to hell with him. The car, like a streak of black lightning, charged toward the residential complex where Lu Ruyan lived. However, just as he was about to turn onto the main road leading to the complex, a dilapidated van with no license plates darted out like a ghost from a dim side road. It was extremely fast, the angle was vicious, and it slammed into the front side of the Porsche with terrifying precision. Bang! A muffled, heart-stopping crash. The black Porsche instantly lost control under the massive impact. Like a fallen leaf caught in a gale, it spun into the roadside green belt. The front of the car smashed violently into a thick plane tree. The hood instantly twisted and deformed, caving inward. The windshield shattered under the immense force, spiderweb cracks spreading instantly. The airbag deployed with a loud boom, slamming heavily into Chun-Li's face. The strong smell of blood instantly filled his nose. Severe pain and intense dizziness made his vision go black, nearly causing him to pass out. After the collision, the van didn't pause for a second. Its engine let out a piercing roar as it reversed quickly. The tires spun on the slick ground for a moment before it abruptly turned and vanished into the vast rain and dark side road, as ghost-like as it had arrived, leaving behind only the pungent smell of burnt rubber. The whole process, fast, precise, ruthless, took less than 10 seconds. Icy rain mixed with shards of glass poured over Chun-Li's head and face, sobering him up slightly. He felt a sharp pain in his forehead. Warm liquid flowed down his cheek, indistinguishable between rain and blood. He tried to move, but found his body tightly pinned by the deformed chassis and the deployed airbag, rendering him immobile. The agony and the freezing rain caused his remaining madness to recede slightly, replaced by a bone-deep terror. Who was it? Ziguan. It had to be Qiguan. He struggled, trying to reach his phone to call the police, but realized it had flown off somewhere during the crash. Just then, through the shattered window, he saw a black sedan silently stop nearby in the rain. The car door opened, and a huge black umbrella unfurled, obscuring the face of the person stepping out. The man was clad in a black trench coat. He was tall, and his gait was steady. Holding an umbrella, he walked unhurriedly, step by step, toward the Porsche that had been reduced to a pile of scrap metal. Raindrops drummed against the umbrella canopy, making a crisp pattering sound. Chun-Li's heart nearly stopped beating. He stared fixedly at the black umbrella. Fear, like a cold, venomous snake, coiled around his heart, tightening its grip with every passing second. It was Qiguan. He had come. He was here to finish the job. The black umbrella tilted slightly, its rim lifting. However, the face revealed beneath it was completely unfamiliar. It was the face of an extremely ordinary, nondescript middle-aged man, the kind who would be instantly forgotten if thrown into a crowd. Yet his eyes were as cold as scalpels, sweeping emotionlessly over the wretched, blood-covered Chun-Li inside the car. That look reminded Chun-Li of the way Qiguan used to look at him. Equally cold, equally indifferent, as if looking at a dead object. The stranger said nothing, merely watching him quietly for a few seconds. The oppression brought by that gaze was more suffocating than any words. Then, the corners of the man's mouth twitched upward ever so slightly, seemingly a fleeting, bone-chillingly cold smile. He did nothing and said nothing. He simply held his umbrella, turned around slowly and calmly, and walked with the same steady pace back toward the black sedan parked in the rain. The car door closed. The engine started. The black sedan slipped silently into the curtain of rain, disappearing at the end of the street. The entire process was like a silent pantomime. Cold rain relentlessly washed over Chun-Li's face, mixing with the blood. Slumped in the twisted cabin, staring in the direction the black sedan had vanished, he was completely submerged and frozen by a massive tide of fear. That wasn't Qiguan, yet it terrified him more, a terror deep in his marrow and impossible to resist, than if Qiguan had come in person. Qiguan didn't even deign to witness his wretched state personally. He had merely sent someone with eyes as cold as knives, to take a look at the pathetic state of this beaten dog. This was absolute contempt, an ultimate humiliation, declaring that he wasn't even qualified to be finished off by Qiguan's own hand. Chun-Li let out a miserable howl that sounded barely human. The howl was filled with despair, fear, unwillingness, and utter breakdown. Exhausting all his strength, he frantically pounded the deformed steering wheel and smashed his forehead against the shattered dashboard. Guan, I won't let you go, even as a ghost. I won't let you go. The shrill curse seemed so weak, so laughable amidst the roar of the torrential rain. The next morning, the rain had passed, and the sky was clear. The sunlight was dazzling. Qi Guanjie sat at the dining table, eating breakfast unhurriedly, fried eggs, toast, and milk. On the TV, the morning news was broadcasting a serious traffic accident occurred in our city last night. Chun Li, former CEO of Lifeng Technology, lost control of his vehicle and crashed into a roadside tree. He suffered severe injuries and is currently in the ICU in critical condition. The cause of the accident is under police investigation. Furthermore, according to the latest reports, Lifeng Technology has been formally placed under investigation by the CSRC for suspected serious violations, and the company's stock trading will be suspended starting today. Founder Chun Li has also been subjected to mandatory coercive measures by the Economic Crime Investigation Department for suspected embezzlement and misappropriation of funds, to be executed once his condition stabilizes. The news footage showed the wreckage of the black Porsche, smashed beyond recognition, and the chaotic scene at the entrance of the Lifeng Technology building, which was sealed off and surrounded by reporters. Qi Guanjie picked up his glass of milk and took a sip. The warm liquid slid down his throat, bringing a strange sense of comfort. He picked up his phone and opened an encrypted chat interface. Brother Long had sent a message. Brother Jie, the job was done cleanly. The kid broke 2 ribs, ruptured his spleen, and has a concussion, enough to keep him in the ICU for 2 months. The Economic Crime Squad will pick him up as soon as he can get out of bed. Don't worry, the traffic police ruled it a single vehicle accident due to slippery roads. Nothing to do with us. Qi Guanjie replied with a single word. Thanks. Balance paid. He put down the phone and continued eating breakfast, his movements elegant. It was as if the bloody accident from the previous night and the shocking scandal playing on TV had nothing to do with him. The study door opened. Lu Rian held onto the doorframe, her face as pale as paper, eyes hollow, the redness and swelling on her forehead not yet subsided. She had obviously heard the news as well. Her body trembled slightly, and her eyes, looking at Qi Guanjie, were filled with unspeakable horror and a despair that came from completely recognizing reality. Qi Guanjie looked up at her, his face devoid of expression. Awake? He asked indifferently, his tone as casual as a comment on the weather. Breakfast is in the kitchen. Heat up yourself. Lu Rian did not move. She stared fixedly at Qi Guanjie, her lips trembling. She seemed to want to say something, yet she couldn't make a sound. An immense fear gripped her. Chun Li was finished, completely finished. Was she next? Qi Guanjie picked up a napkin and wiped the corner of his mouth. He stood up and walked over to Lu Rian. His height created an invisible sense of oppression. By the way, he said, as if suddenly remembering something, his tone flat and rippleless. Your parents' flight was yesterday afternoon, so they should be arriving soon, right? I heard your father's heart hasn't been too good lately. I hope their journey goes smoothly. He spoke with deliberate understatement, as if it were merely a passing remark. Then, stepping around Lu Rian, who stood stiff as a puppet, he picked up his suit jacket from the back of the chair and walked calmly toward the foyer. Lu Rian stood as if thunderstruck. She spun around violently, staring at Qi Guanjie's upright back, a chill rushing from the soles of her feet straight to the crown of her head. He mentioned her parents. What did he mean? What was he planning to do? Ziguanya, she screamed with all her strength, her voice sharp and distorted by fear. What do you want to do to my parents? They are innocent. If you have a problem, come at me. Come at me. Qi Guanjie stopped in the foyer and unhurriedly put on his leather shoes. He did not look back. Instead, facing the mirror-like surface of the shoe cabinet, he adjusted his tie. Innocent, he repeated the word softly, his tone carrying a trace of extremely subtle, icy mockery. Finally, he turned his head slightly. From the corner of his eye, his gaze swept over Lu Rian's face, which was twisted in abject terror. The corner of his mouth hooked up into an arc that was fleeting, yet enough to terrify her to her very soul. I'm simply concerned about the health of the elders. Don't be nervous. His voice remained steady, yet it was like a blunt knife tempered in ice, slowly slicing through Lu Rian's last psychological defense. With that, he opened the door and walked out. The door clicked softly shut behind him. To Lu Rian's ears, that soft click sounded like the booming crash of the gates of hell closing. Her legs gave way, no longer able to support her. She slid down the doorframe to the floor, curling her body into a ball and letting out an uncontrollable, despairing wail. She knew that her hell had only just begun, and her parents were about to be dragged into this vortex of destruction. The soft sound of the closing door rang in Lu Rian's heart like a death knell. She sat paralyzed on the cold floor, her body trembling like a withered leaf in the autumn wind. Qiguan Jie's final icy look and that remark about caring for the elder's health coiled around her heart like a venomous snake, tightening its grip and bringing with it a suffocating terror. Her parents. Qiguan Jie was going to target her parents. This realization made her instantly collapse. She scrambled on hands and knees toward the landline in the living room, her fingers shaking so violently she could barely press the buttons. She had to call, warn her parents, tell them not to come back, or to leave immediately. Beep, beep, beep. Busy signal. The call wouldn't go through at all. She frantically dialed her parents' cell phones. Hello, the subscriber you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. The cold, electronic female voice repeated over and over, like a pronouncement of death. Lu Ruyan's heart sank into a bottomless abyss. It was over. It must be Qiguan Jie. He had jammed the phone signals in the house. He had cut off her connection to the outside world. He intended to trap her here, making her watch helplessly as everyone she cared about fell into the abyss because of her. Lu Ruyan let out a roar of despair and smashed the telephone receiver against the wall. Qiguan Jie, you devil, you beast! Like a trapped animal, she paced, screamed, and wept in vain within the empty, freezing living room, until finally, only exhausted whimpers remained. Fear, like a cold tide, thoroughly drowned her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, at the airport highway exit, a black business van was driving smoothly. Inside the vehicle, Lu Ruyan's parents, her father, Lu Jianbang, and her mother, Zhao Yufan, had just returned from a vacation abroad. Their faces still carried the fatigue of travel, mixed with the relief of coming home. Lu Jianbang was in his early 60s, with graying hair and a slightly portly figure. He wore a well-made jacket. In his earlier years, he had been a somewhat successful businessman, but was now retired at home with a heart condition. Zhao Yufan had maintained herself well and still retained her charm. At this moment, she was resting her eyes, leaning against her husband's shoulder. Old Lu, now that we're back, you really need to rest properly. Stop worrying about those investments, Zhao Yufan said with her eyes closed. I know. Lu Jianbang patted his wife's hand, smiling amiably. This time I'll listen to you and just enjoy a quiet life. Once we get home, let's ask Ruyan and Xiaojie to come over for dinner. It's been a while since we've seen them. At the mention of their daughter and son-in-law, a smile spread across Zhao Yufan's face. Yes, Xiaojie is a steady young man. With Ruyan by his side, we can rest easy. The car exited the highway and merged into the city traffic. While waiting for a red light at an intersection, a black sedan with heavily tinted windows pulled up silently, stopping right beside their MPV. Lu Jianbang glanced casually at the car beside them, paying it little mind. However, just then, the rear window of the black sedan slowly lowered, opening just a crack. The completely unfamiliar, expressionless face of a man appeared behind the gap. The man's gaze was cold and sharp, like that of a falcon, staring directly and unabashedly at Lu Jianbang and Zhao Yufan inside the vehicle. That look, it was filled with undisguised scrutiny, coldness, and even a hint of mockery. Lu Jianbang's heart skipped a beat. An inexplicable sense of unease instantly seized him. He instinctively wanted to look away, but the man kept staring dead at him. A few seconds later, the window slowly rolled back up, cutting off the view of that chilling face. The moment the traffic light turned green, the black sedan sped away, quickly vanishing into the traffic. What is it, old Lu? Sensing something odd about her husband, Zhao Yufan opened her eyes and asked. Nothing. Lu Jianbang suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and forced a smile. I probably just saw things. But his palms were slick with cold sweat. That look, it was too strange. It was full of malice. The MPV continued towards their home. However, the closer they got to their house, the stronger the sense of foreboding grew in Lu Jianbang's heart. He took out his phone to call his daughter and check in, only to find that there was no signal, not a single bar. Strange. Why is there no signal? He muttered to himself, his sense of foreboding deepening. The car finally pulled into their high-end residential complex. As soon as they entered the gate, Lu Jianbang sensed that something was wrong. The complex was usually very quiet, but now a crowd had gathered, pointing towards their building and whispering among themselves. What's going on? Zhao Yufan frowned as well. The car stopped in front of their home. The scene before them left Lu Jianbang and Zhao Yufan instantly stunned. The carved iron gates of their detached villa had been sprayed with bright, piercing red paint, forming shocking characters. Deadbeat Lu Jianbang. Pay back your debts. A life for a life. The daughter pays the father's debt. Lu Ruyan is a cheating whore. May your whole family die. The filthy, vicious curses covered their meticulously maintained gate like festering sores. The once beautiful flower bed at the entrance had been trampled into a mess. Ah! Zhao Yufan let out a short, sharp cry, her face turning instantly pale. Lu Jianbang felt as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. His body swayed. One hand clutched his chest, and his face turned from red to a sickly pallor as his breathing became ragged. Who did this? The driver was terrified too and hurriedly got out to check. Just then, several men in floral shirts, looking like thugs and clearly up to no good, climbed out a nearby van. Cigarettes dangling from their mouths, they swaggered over to the MPV. The leader, a burly man with a scar on his face, violently kicked the hood of the vehicle. Bang! A loud crash. Lu Jianbang, you old coot. We finally caught you. The scarred man grinned savagely, spittle flying as he shouted, "You f***ing owe our brother Long 30 million in high-interest loans. With interest, it snowballed to 50 million. When are you going to pay up?" Huh? High-interest loans? 30 million? 50 million? Lu Jianbang's brain buzzed. When had he ever borrowed from loan sharks? You're talking nonsense. I don't know any brother Long, and I certainly never borrowed any money. He was shaking with rage, the dull pain in his chest intensifying. Don't know him. The scar man looked like he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. He pulled a stack of documents from his jacket and slapped them against the windshield. It's all here in black and white. Your signature, your fingerprint, and the property of your daughter and son-in-law that you put up as collateral, trying to welch on the debt. Lu Jianbang stared at the documents, his vision suddenly going dark. That signature, it was a nearly perfect imitation, but it was definitely not his handwriting. The collateral included the very villa he and his wife owned, as well as the details of the marital home belonging to his daughter, Lu Ruyan, and Qiguan Jie. Even the addresses were listed clearly. Fake! This is a forgery! Lu Jianbang screamed, feeling as though a giant hand was crushing his heart. The pain made it almost impossible to breathe. Forgery! The scarred man sneered, his eyes vicious. What you say doesn't mean SHD. It only matters what the judge says. However, before the judge decides, he waved his hand abruptly. Boys, help Boss Lu refresh his memory. Let him know the consequences of owing Brother Long money and not paying it back. Several thugs immediately surrounded them, grinning malevolently. Their baseball bats and iron chains banged against the car, creating an ear-piercing racket. Someone started kicking the car door violently. Others took out cans of red spray paint and began spraying indiscriminately all over the vehicle. Stop! You stop it! I'm calling the police! Zhao Yufan screamed in terror. She tried to take out her phone, only to discover that there was no signal. Call the police? Scarface looked as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed his baseball bat at Zhao Yufan's nose through the car window. Go ahead and call. Let's see if the police get here faster, or if I tear your old bones apart faster. Lu Jianbang, you either pay up today or... Haha, we'll take this broken house and your wife and daughter as payment. The boys haven't tried a mother-daughter pair before. The filthy language, accompanied by rampant laughter, pierced the ears of Lu Jianbang and his wife like poison needles. You animals! Lu Jianbang's eyes were splitting with rage, immense anger and humiliation surging to his brain. He looked at the leering faces outside the car, saw his defaced home, heard the vile threats, and linked them to that cold stare on the airport highway and the anomaly of his daughter's phone not connecting. A terrifying, crystal-clear thought struck him like lightning. Qiguanjie. It was Qiguanjie. Only he had the power to forge such realistic debt documents. Only he could mobilize these lawless thugs. And only he had the motive to use such vicious means for revenge. Revenge for Ruyan's infidelity. It's Qiguanjie. Who sent you? Isn't it? Lu Jianbang clutched his chest, which was racked with intense pain. His voice was hoarse, broken, and filled with despair. Scarface paused for a moment. Then the grin on his face twisted even further. Joe, the old thing isn't too stupid after all. But so what if you know? Are you even worthy of speaking Brother Jie's name? A debt paid is a debt made. It's the law of nature. Today, you're paying this money whether you want to or not. Boys, don't waste breath on them. Get buffed. Before Scarface could finish his sentence, a mouthful of scalding blood suddenly sprayed from Lu Jianbang's mouth. Bright red droplets instantly stained the windshield and dyed the front of his shirt crimson. Old Lu, Zhao Yufan, let out a heart-rending scream. Lu Jianbang's eyes were wide open, the whites filled with blood from extreme rage and the agony in his heart. He stared dead at the thugs outside, who had momentarily stopped in shock at the sight of the blood. A gurgling, unwilling sound rattled in his throat. His body convulsed violently a few times, and then his head tilted to the side as he slumped into the seat, lifeless. Dad! A scream so shrill it was distorted came from the entrance of the residential compound. At some point, Lu Ruyan had rushed out of the house. Her hair was a mess, her face pale as a ghost, the swelling on her forehead hadn't gone down, and she was barefoot, wearing only thin pajamas. She had clearly run all the way there. She had witnessed the final moment of her father vomiting blood and collapsing with her own eyes. Dad! Lu Ruyan charged toward the van like a madwoman, but was shoved away hard by Scarface, who had snapped back to reality. Get lost. Go die somewhere else. Scarface had also been startled by Lu Jianbang's sudden hematemesis, but his ferocious nature quickly returned. Damn it. Trying to play dead to get out of the debt? Not a chance. Jianbang. Jianbang, wake up. Don't scare me. Zhao Yufan threw herself on her husband, weeping hysterically. Help. Murder. Someone call an ambulance. Quick. Some of the neighbors watching the commotion began to call the police, while others pointed and whispered, but no one dared to step forward. Lu Ruyan was pushed to the ground, her palms and knees scraped and bleeding. She lifted her head, looking at her mother wailing while holding her father, whose life hung in the balance. Inside the car, looking at the fiendish thugs outside, and looking at their home covered in filth. A massive wave of grief, anger, and despair drowned her completely like a tsunami. She snapped her gaze toward Scarface, her eyes erupting with bone-deep hatred, her voice rasping like an evil spirit. Qiguanjie, Ziguanye, I won't let you go, even if I become a ghost. I curse you. I curse you to die a horrible death. The desolate curse echoed over the chaotic residential compound. In Qiguanjie's office, all was quiet. He was facing his computer screen, processing an ordinary loan document. His phone screen lit up. It was an encrypted message. Brother Jie, the show at the Lu house has concluded. Lu Jianbang suffered a sudden heart attack on the scene. The ambulance took him away. Status unknown. Lu Ruyan witnessed the whole process and had a breakdown. Zhao Yufan is hysterical. The debt documents were left accidentally at the scene as planned. Brother Long's men have withdrawn. The cops are on their way. Qiguanjie's gaze lingered on the screen for a second, his expression completely unwavering. He picked up the coffee at hand and took a gentle sip. Bitter, slightly acidic, with a trace of a strange, sweet aftertaste. He picked up the intercom. Xiao Zhang, cancel all my appointments for the afternoon. I have an urgent family matter that requires my attention. From the other end came the assistant's respectful reply. Yes, Manager Qiguan. Hanging up, Qiguanjie leaned back in his chair, casting his gaze toward the bright sunshine outside the window. The sunlight spilled onto his chiseled face, half illuminated, half hidden in deep shadow. He slowly closed his eyes, feeling the cold flame named vengeance within his chest, burning with unprecedented intensity, and Satisfaction. The noose of implication had already tightened. Who should be next? The smell of disinfectant in the hospital was pungent, mixed with the aura of despair and death. The red light outside the emergency room shone blindingly, like congealed blood. Lu Rian curled up on the cold plastic bench, still wearing that thin nightgown, stained with mud and blood, her bare feet turning blue from the cold. Her face was bloodless, her eyes staring vacantly. Her tears had long since dried, leaving only two crusted tracks. The red swelling on her forehead looked even more hideous under the pale lights. She tightly hugged her mother, Zhao Yufin's jacket in her arms, the one the nurse had just removed from her mother's body. Zhao Yufin sat beside her, looking as if her soul had been sucked out. Her hair was messy, her gaze unfocused, and she muttered incessantly, her voice broken and chaotic. Jianbang. My Jianbang. It can't be. It can't be. Devils. They're all devils. Rian. Where's my Rian? Where is Rian? Sometimes she grabbed Lu Rian's arm, digging her nails deep into the flesh. Other times she looked around in terror, as if surrounded by life-claiming ghouls. The doctor came out of the emergency room, shaking his head with a grave expression. The patient suffered a massive acute myocardial infarction. His heartbeat and breathing had already stopped upon arrival. We did our best. Please accept our condolences. Boom! Lu Ruyan felt something explode in her brain. The last thread of support collapsed completely. As if struck by an invisible heavy hammer, her body suddenly went limp. She slid off the chair and knelt heavily onto the cold floor tiles. Her throat emitted rasping, gasping sounds like someone on the verge of death, yet she could not cry out. Dad! A scream of ultimate misery, hoarse and soundless, rampaged through her chest, finally turning into a mouthful of metallic blood that sprayed violently onto the cold ground. Jian Bang. Zhao Yufin let out a wail that sounded inhuman, completely losing her mind. She jumped up abruptly from the chair, hair disheveled and eyes frantic, pointing at the empty end of the corridor. Laughing and crying, she screamed, "The devil! He's here! He's wearing black. He's holding a knife. He wants to kill us. Kill our whole family. Run! Run quickly!" She charged recklessly toward the end of the hall, but was firmly intercepted by nurses and security guards rushing over at the noise. Only after being forcibly injected with a sedative did she go limp and get dragged into a nearby observation room. Lu Rian knelt on the cold floor, watching the gurney bearing her father covered in a white sheet being pushed out, watching her mother's manic figure being dragged away, watching the pool of glaring blood she had spat onto the ground. The world completely lost its color before her eyes, leaving only boundless darkness and freezing despair. A shattered home, truly a family destroyed and lives lost. And all of this was because of her, because she had provoked that devil, Qiguan Jie. Hate, monstrous hatred surged like magma within her cold, dead chest. She wanted revenge. She wanted Qiguan Jie to pay in blood, even if it meant mutual destruction. This thought, like a wisp of ghost fire in the dark, supported her teetering body. She staggered to her feet, her eyes empty yet burning with a mad flame. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay here. She was going to find Qiguan Jie. Like a walking corpse, barefoot and wearing thin, blood-stained pajamas, she walked out of the hospital in a daze. The afternoon sun was blinding and scorching, but shining on her, she felt no warmth. Passers-by cast looks of shock, disdain, or pity, but she remained completely oblivious. She walked aimlessly, crossing bustling streets and traversing filthy alleys. The bloodstains on her body and her disheveled appearance attracted some malicious stares. A few hoodlum-looking youths followed behind her, whistling and making lewd jokes. Lu Rian had no reaction. Her mental world was already filled with hatred and despair. Unknowingly, she arrived at an abandoned factory district. The massive factory building lay in utter ruin, with shattered windows, mottled walls, and overgrown weeds. It was desolate here, with only the whimpering sound of the wind blowing through the broken holes. Lu Rian could support herself no longer. She leaned against a broken wall and slid down to sit. Physical exhaustion, hunger, cold, and a massive mental blow hit her like a tide. She hugged her knees, buried her face deeply into them, and her body began to tremble violently and uncontrollably. Just then, a harsh roar of motorcycle engines approached from the distance. Several modified, flashy motorcycles roared into the abandoned factory grounds, screeching to a halt in front of Lu Ruyan, kicking up a cloud of dust. 4 or 5 men jumped off the bikes, wearing tight vests revealing tattooed arms, their hair dyed various colors, their eyes lecherous and ferocious. The leader, a bald man with a thick gold chain around his neck and a cigarette dangling from his mouth, looked Lu Ruyan up and down as she curled up in the corner, sizing her up like a piece of merchandise. "Yo, looks like we got lucky today, boys." The bald man spat out his cigarette and grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "In the middle of nowhere, and we find a top-tier little wildcat? Look at that figure, TSK. Boss, this chick looks kind of familiar. Doesn't she look like that one on the internet? The one messing around with that guy named Chun." A thug with green hair stared at Lu Ruyan's face and suddenly shouted, "Hey, it really is her. That one named Lu Ruyan, the one whose husband caught her cheating. Those photos online were really explicit." Another thug recognized her too and howled in excitement. Lu Ruyan snapped her head up, her hollow eyes instantly erupting with terror and extreme disgust. She recognized these men. They were some of the thugs who had splashed paint on her door this morning and driven her father to his death. That green-haired one and another yellow-haired one were there at the time. It was Qiguan Jie. It was Qiguan Jie again. He wouldn't even give her a final moment of respite. He wanted to destroy her completely. "Get away!" Lu Ruyan roared with all her might, her voice hoarse and broken. "You running dogs of Qiguan Jie. Get lost. Although, got a temper, huh?" The bald man grinned hideously, approaching step by step. "Qiguan Jie, are you even worthy of speaking Brother Jie's name?" But his eyes grew even more lecherous. "Heard you good in bed? Got that Shingai all bewitched. How about letting us boys have a taste today? Let's see what you're really capable of, you slut." "Don't come over." Lu Ruyan shrank back in terror, her spine pressed tight against the cold wall. There was nowhere left to retreat. Despair, like cold vines, entangled her limbs and bones. "Hold her down." The bald man waved his hand. Several thugs immediately pounced on her like wolves and tigers. Filthy hands brutally grabbed Lu Ruyan's arms and hair. The pungent smell of sweat and tobacco smoke enveloped her. "Let me go. Animals. You bunch of animals. Qiguan Jie won't let you get away with this." Lu Ruyan struggled, kicked, and bit with all her life. Like a female beast cornered in a desperate situation. Smack! A loud slap struck her face viciously. It made her see stars, and blood instantly oozed from the corner of her mouth. "Stinking bitch. You ungrateful whore." The bald man spat and tore open the front of her already thin nightgown. Riot! The sound of fabric tearing was exceptionally piercing in the empty ruins. Large patches of snow-white skin were exposed to the freezing air and the thugs' lecherous gazes. "Ah!" Lu Ruyan let out a scream of utmost misery. Immense humiliation and terror caused her whole body to convulse. The thugs let out excited howls, swarming forward like hyenas smelling blood. Filthy hands kneaded and scratched her body at will. Her clothes were brutally torn to shreds. Her struggling and kicking were easily suppressed. Desperate cries and curses were drowned out by the thugs' vulgar jeers and panting. The cold, rough concrete floor rubbed against her naked skin. The dilapidated factory dome twisted and spun in her tear-blurred vision. The heavy bodies of men, the nauseating body odor, the tearing pain, like countless red-hot branding irons, seared deep in her body and soul. She was like a rag, repeatedly ravaged and thoroughly torn apart. Every thrust brought a deeper hell. She no longer struggled, no longer cried out. She stared blankly at the gray sky, her teeth biting deep in her lower lip, blood flowing down the corner of her mouth. Her fingernails scratched frantically at the cold concrete floor until her fingertips were a bloody mess. Hate, only boundless hatred, for these beasts on top of her, for Qiguan Jie who orchestrated all of this from behind the scenes. Hatred, like venom, bred and spread wildly within her broken body. Who knows how much time passed? It felt as long as a century. The weight finally lifted from her body. The thugs, satisfied, pulled up their pants and fastened their belts, spewing foul obscenities as they rated her performance. The bald man adjusted his belt and walked over to the barely breathing Lu Ruyan. Squatting down, he pinched her chin with rough fingers, staring at her hollow, numb face stained with tears and blood. He grinned hideously. Not bad. Truly the slut boss Chun used to play with. When we get back, we'll tell Brother Jia we did a hell of a job, Lu Ruyan's eyes rolled extremely slowly, focusing on the bald man's repulsive face. Deep within that hollow gaze, a faint yet incomparably venomous flame kindled. The bald man didn't care in the least. He patted her cheek, stood up, and shouted to his men, "Let's go." What a dump. This place is bad luck. Motorcycle engines roared to life once more, and the thugs sped away, leaving behind a chaotic mess and a thoroughly broken woman. Lu Ruyan curled up naked on the cold, filthy concrete floor, her body covered in purple bruises, scratch marks, and disgusting, viscous fluids. She lay motionless, like a broken doll discarded after being played to ruin. Only the slight rise and fall of her chest proved she was still alive. The cold wind whistled through the dilapidated factory like a whimper, whipping up dust and dead leaves to strike against her freezing body. She didn't know how much time had passed before her finger twitched slightly. Then, agonizingly slowly, she pushed herself up with bloody, mangled hands. Inch by inch, she dragged herself toward the shredded, blood-stained fragments of her nightgown nearby. Summoning every ounce of strength, she grasped the tattered cloth, futilely and tremblingly attempting to cover her naked, defiled body. Every minute movement triggered a tearing agony in her lower body. Tears finally welled up again. They were not tears of sorrow, nor of fear, but of a pure, freezing hatred strong enough to incinerate everything. Qi Guanjia, Qi Guanjia, I want you dead. I want you to die without a grave to your name. She screamed silently, frantically in her heart. Every word was laced with blood and poison. The cold wind scraped across her exposed skin like a knife. Lu Ruyan curled up in a freezing corner of the abandoned factory, barely shielding her body with a few blood-stained, tattered rags. Every breath pulled at the tearing pain below. Every heartbeat was accompanied by humiliation and hatred that penetrated to the marrow. The chill of her body was not even a fraction of the coldness in her heart. She didn't know how long she lay there. Daylight leaked through the cracks in the ruined roof, shifting from bright to dim yellow, before finally sinking into absolute darkness. Hunger and cold gnawed at her remaining strength like maggots in the bone. A high fever began to rage, her consciousness drifting between a hell of fire and ice. In the intervals between stupor and clarity, a single thought grew wildly in her heart, like a poisonous vine. Survive. She must survive. Only by living could she take revenge. Only then could she make that devil Qi Guan Jie pay. This thought sustained her. When the darkest hour before dawn arrived, she gritted her teeth. Using her mangled hands to brace against the wall, she dragged her body, heavy as lead and racked with pain, upwards inch by inch until she stood. Every step felt like walking on red-hot coals. The piercing agony made her vision go black. She had to leave this place. She needed clothes, food. She needed a corner where she could briefly catch her breath and gather her strength. Like a ghost, barefoot and staggering, she made her way out of the abandoned factory district. Avoiding the well-lit main roads, she navigated through filthy alleyways and the city shadows. Her blood-stained and wretched appearance attracted malicious gazes. A homeless man tried to approach her, but was scared off by the beast-like, venomous ferocity in her eyes. Finally, deep in a back alley piled with refuse, she found a few discarded, sour-smelling garments. She put them on numbly. The oversized clothes hung loosely on her emaciated frame, barely covering her body. In a corner running with sewage, she found half a loaf of hardened bread. She stuffed it into her mouth without hesitation. The dry, rough crumbs scraped her throat, triggering violent coughing and an urge to vomit, but she forced herself to swallow it down. Survive. For revenge. In the days that followed, Lu Ruyan completely vanished from the world of normal people. She became a true ghost, a maggot writhing in the filthiest, darkest corners of the city. She curled up under bridges, enduring the freezing winter winds and harassment from vagrants. She rummaged through trash cans for scraps, fighting wild dogs for food. With disheveled hair and a dirty face, her whole body emitted a foul stench. Her once beautiful face was covered in filth and hatred, leaving only a pair of deep-set eyes burning with venomous flames. In such harsh conditions, the injuries on her body not only failed to heal, but deteriorated rapidly. The wounds on her lower body were infected and festering. Every act of urination was like torture, bringing tearing agony and high fever. She began running a persistent low-grade fever. Her cough grew worse, and the phlegm she coughed up was streaked with blood. She knew she was sick, seriously so, but she had no money and dared not go to the hospital. Qi Guanjie had eyes there. The flame of revenge supported her struggle to cling to life. Like a wounded she-wolf, she licked her wounds in the dark, fixing her most venomous gaze dead on the enemy she could not touch but cursed every moment of every day. She began to watch for any news about Qi Guanjie. Like the most obsessive hunter, she scoured for traces of her prey. She saw in a discarded old newspaper, Lifeng Technology officially declares bankruptcy liquidation. Founder Chun Li succumbed to his injuries and passed away the day before yesterday in the detention center hospital. Once a rising star in finance, he ended up with his reputation ruined and his family destroyed, a truly lamentable outcome. Chun Li was dead, died in jail. Lu Ruyan looked at that tiny news snippet, her face expressionless, but the hatred in the depths of her eyes burned even hotter. Qi Guanjie, you did all of this. From a drunken tramp. In exchange for half a bottle of scavenged cheap liquor, she obtained a vague address. A seedy urban village in the south of the city, rumored to be a haunt for the thugs working under Brother Long. Brother Long, that head beast who sent thugs to drive her father to his death and gang-raped her. He was Qi Guanjie's lackey. Like a hyena smelling blood, Lu Ruyan dragged her sickly body and spent several days finally finding that urban village, where sewage flowed freely and electrical wires were dense as spiderwebs. She staked out for 2 days in the back alley of a hair salon that reeked of cheap perfume and bad tobacco, its signage suggestive. Finally, late one night, she saw that familiar bald head, the beast who led the gang rape against her. He walked staggeringly out of the salon with his arm around a heavily made-up woman, humming an obscene tune. Hatred instantly overwhelmed all of Lu Ruyan's reason. Like a streak of black lightning, she lunged out from behind the trash heap where she was hiding. In her hand, she tightly gripped a scavenged shard of glass with sharp edges. "You beast! Go to hell!" she screamed, using all her strength to stab that glass viciously toward the bald man's back. However, she had overestimated her incredibly weak body. She was too slow, her strength too small. Although the bald man was half drunk, his instincts from years of brawling remained. Hearing the wind and the scream behind him, he sharply ducked his neck and instinctively dodged to the side. The sharp glass shard failed to pierce his heart, but plunged deep into his thick right arm. Blood gushed out instantly. "Arg! Fuck!" The bald man roared in fury from the pain. He whipped around to see the attacker was actually Lu Ruyan, with her face covered in filth and hatred. "Damn it! It's you, you stinking bitch!" Shocked and furious, once he recognized Lu Ruyan, his face instantly revealed a hideous cruelty. He grabbed Lu Ruyan's withered wrist and twisted it violently. Crack! A bone-chilling snapping sound. Lu Ruyan let out a shrill scream. Her wrist was brutally broken. The glass shard fell from her hand to the ground. "You want to die?" Murderous intent flashed in the bald man's eyes. His uninjured hand viciously choked Lu Ruyan's neck, lifting her entire body up and slamming her heavily against the damp, filthy wall of the alley. Ugh! Ugh! Lu Ruyan's feet left the ground. Her throat was strangled by a hand like an iron pincer, instantly suffocating her. She kicked and flailed in vain. Piercing pain radiated from her broken wrist, and her vision went black in waves. "Damn it! Didn't kill you last time, and you still dare to come here to die?" The bald man grinned malevolently, watching Lu Ruyan's face twist and turn red from suffocation. Brother Jia was right. You're just an unkillable cockroach. Disgusting. He leaned close to Lu Ruyan's ear and whispered in a voice only they could hear, filled with cruel pleasure. Let me tell you a secret. That day at the abandoned factory, the boys and I, we were carrying a disease. A special gift ordered by Brother Jia. Do you like it? Ha ha ha. Carrying a disease. Lu Ruyan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her blood froze instantly. The persistent pain in her lower body and the high fever. Could it be? Could it be? Immense fear and deeper despair drowned her in an instant. She stopped struggling. The venom in her eyes was replaced by a complete, ashen deadness. The bald man watched the change in her eyes, smirked hideously with satisfaction, and slammed her hard onto the ground as if he were tossing out trash. Bang! Lu Ruyan's body smashed against the cold, damp ground. A wave of heart-rending agony shot from her broken wrist. She curled into a ball, coughing violently and retching up acid streaked with blood. Get lost. If I see you again, I'll kill you. Clutching his bleeding arm, the bald man cursed as he kicked Lu Ruyan. Then, wrapping his arm around the terrified woman, he turned and walked into the back door of the hair salon. The alley was left with only the sound of Lu Ruyan's painful gasps and stifled whimpers. She lay prone on the ground, her face pressed against the cold, foul-smelling sewage, her body trembling uncontrollably from the agony and high fever. The bald man's words drilled into her ears like a venomous snake, carrying a disease, a gift specifically ordered by Qiguan Jia. So even her last remaining possession, her body, had been thoroughly defiled and destroyed by him. He didn't just want her reputation ruined and her family destroyed. He wanted her to die slowly and shamefully in pain and filth, like a rotting, maggot-infested corpse. Hate, boundless hatred surged like volcanic magma within her cold, dead chest. Yet it was crushed down by an even deeper despair and powerlessness. Struggling, she used her uninjured hand to prop up her body, inching her way out of the filthy alley like a maggot. Her broken wrist hung limp and useless. Every movement brought excruciating pain. She crawled to a more secluded corner piled with construction debris and curled up. The high fever blurred her consciousness, and the agony from her lower body and wrist washed over her in waves like a tide. The cold penetrated to her marrow. Survive! Revenge! These thoughts were like a candle in the wind, flickering and growing weaker. Trembling, she reached into her tattered clothes with her good hand, fumbling around. In an extremely hidden inner lining, her last instinct for self-preservation, she touched a few banknotes stained with sweat, blood, and filth, their denominations barely visible, and a small packet of white powder wrapped tightly in plastic. It was something she had stolen a few days ago from an unconscious addict who had overdosed in the corner of an abandoned card room. At the time, she had inexplicably hidden it away, intended as a final release in her moment of despair, or perhaps a weapon. Now, staring at the packet of white powder, a spark of crazy, eerie light ignited in Lu Ruyan's dead, hollow eyes. Stop the pain. It can stop the pain. And make me forget. A tempting, devilish voice whispered in her mind. Trembling, she tore the plastic bag open with her teeth. Looking at the white powder, she hesitated for only a second. The tearing, burning pain in her lower body, the agony of her broken wrist, the torment of the fever, and the terror of that filthy disease clinging to her like maggots in her bones, instantly overwhelmed all reason. She stuck out her tongue and licked a bit of the powder. A strange, bitter heat instantly spread from the tip of her tongue. Immediately after, an intense, illusory warmth swept through her cold limbs and bones. The agony in her body receded like a tide. A sense of floating, a lightness as if shedding her heavy flesh, and a false euphoria instantly took over her brain. Ugh! She let out a satisfied sigh and greedily licked up more. The pain vanished. The cold vanished. The humiliation vanished. Even that bone-deep hatred seemed to become distant and blurry. Bizarre hallucinations appeared before her eyes. She felt as though she had returned to 7 years ago, the moment Qiguan Jie first put the wedding ring on her finger. His eyes were gentle, his smile warm. Then the image warped, turning into Qiguan Jie's cold, mocking face, into the moment Chun-Li fell from the building, into her father vomiting blood and collapsing, into the hideous grins of those thugs. No. No. She shook her head painfully amidst the hallucinations and subconsciously licked more of the powder. An even stronger wave of pleasure surged forth, completely drowning out the painful visions. She felt herself flying away from this filthy, painful world, flying toward a warm, pain-free void. In the corner, Lu Ruyan's curled-up body gradually stopped trembling. The twisted expression of pain on her face was replaced by an eerie, hollow calm. Only the occasional unconscious twitch proved she was still alive. White powder clung to her cracked lips like a withered, deadly flower. The flames of revenge gradually extinguished within the illusory pleasure of the drugs, leaving only ashes. She had finally slipped completely into the filthiest, most desperate abyss that Qiguan Jie had meticulously prepared for her. A filthy rat poked its head out of the trash, sniffed warily, and then scurried quickly across Lu Ruyan's insensible body. Time flowed like turbid sewage, slow, viscous, and thick. For Lu Ruyan, the boundary between day and night had long since blurred. Her world had been reduced to just two things: pain that penetrated to the marrow, and the white powder that offered a fleeting, illusory release. Plagued by high fever, infection, and malnutrition, the fracture in her wrist had no chance of healing. Instead, it had twisted into a grotesque deformity, hanging limp, an ugly, useless burden. The infection in her lower body continued to deteriorate. A mixture of pus, blood, and foul-smelling secretions soaked through her tattered trousers. Her persistent cough grew increasingly violent. What she coughed up was no longer mere streaks of blood, but sticky, metallic-smelling clots of dark crimson. Every breath rasped like a broken bellows, accompanied by a hoarse, wheezing rattle. The fleeting euphoria of the drugs was always followed by profounder agony and prostration. She was like a veritable walking corpse, writhing in the shadows of the city. Her movements were sluggish and stiff as she scavenged through trash. When the cravings hit, she would curl up like a maggot in a corner, twitching and wailing, mucus and tears streaming down her face. With her one good hand, she would claw madly at her own skin, leaving behind streaks of blood. Only a tiny pinch of white powder could make her briefly live again. She would stare blankly at the sky, an eerie calm floating upon her face. She no longer thought of revenge. The notion was too distant, too heavy, like an unshakable mountain. Qiguan Jie's name appeared occasionally in her drug-induced hallucinations, but no longer invoked monstrous hatred, only a shudder of extreme terror mixed with numbness. That man was the god who held the power of life and death over her, the inescapable shadow that shrouded her world. She only wanted to stop the pain. She only wanted to obtain a moment of illusory peace before the next, more violent wave of agony struck. For this, she would give anything. Dignity? What was that? That had long since been crushed upon the cold floor of an abandoned factory. It was a dreary, rainy evening. Lu Ruyan huddled beneath a subway ventilation grate, seeking shelter from the biting wind and icy drizzle. Soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably, her consciousness blurred under the dual torture of withdrawal and illness. She fumbled through the last recesses of her clothing, only to discover with despair that the life-saving white powder was gone. Not a speck remained. Panic seized her instantly. It was more terrifying than physical pain. She collapsed to the ground like a boneless mollusk, her body spasming and convulsing without check. Mucus and tears poured forth as she emitted a beast-like howl of agony from her throat. Give me, please, give me a little." She reached out toward the hurried pedestrians who cast glances of disgust. Her one good hand was withered and skeletal, the fingernails packed with filth. No one paid her any mind. People skirted around her as if avoiding the plague. Just as her consciousness was about to sink completely into the dark abyss of pain, a pair of polished black leather shoes stopped in the filthy puddle before her. Lu Ruyan's clouded gaze struggled to move upward. Sharp black trousers, the hem of an immaculately cut dark gray coat. And further up was the completely unfamiliar, expressionless face of a man. The face was ordinary, but the eyes were like two bottomless ancient wells, cold and indifferent. The man did not speak. He simply gazed down at her quietly, as if watching an ant struggling in the mud. As if clutching at the final straw, Lu Ruyan summoned every ounce of her remaining strength. She extended that skeletal hand and clamped onto the man's pant leg, her voice raspy and broken. Please. Give me a little money. Or powder, please. I hurt so much." The man allowed her to hold on, making no move to pull away. His gaze fell upon Lu Ruyan's twisted, filthy broken wrist, swept over her face, ravaged by addiction and disease, and finally rested on her sunken eyes, which held nothing but numbness and greed. A few seconds of deathly silence passed. There was only Lu Ruyan's pained gasping and the whistling wind from the subway vent. Then, slowly, painfully slowly, the man retrieved something from the inside pocket of his coat. It was not money. It was not drugs. It was a small, transparent, sealed plastic medicine bottle. Inside the bottle were several small, round, pale blue pills. The man crouched down and placed the small bottle into the skeletal palm of the hand, still clutching his pant leg. His movements were light. His fingertips did not even graze Lu Ruyan's filthy skin. "Brother Jia sent this to you." The man's voice was devoid of inflection, cold as a machine. "He says this is for the pain. The effect is very good. Brother Jia, Ziguan Ye." This name, like the most terrifying of curses, instantly pierced through Lu Ruyan's numb nerves. Her whole body shuddered violently, as if struck by high-voltage current. The hand clutching the man's trouser leg jerked back, as if seared by a branding iron. She stared in horror at the tiny medicine bottle in her palm. The pale blue pills. In the dim light, they emitted an eerie glow. "No. No." Guttural sounds of terror rattled in Lu Ruyan's throat as she scrambled backward, desperate to get away from the bottle, away from this man who had brought the gift. "Take it away. Take it away. I won't take it. I won't touch anything of his. Devil. He's a devil." The man watched her terrified reaction with an expressionless face, then slowly stood up. He took out a pristine white handkerchief and carefully wiped the spot on his trousers where Lu Ruyan had grabbed him, as if it had been contaminated by some deadly pathogen. "The message has been delivered." He spoke coldly. Then, without sparing another glance at the petrified woman on the ground, he turned and walked away with steady steps, vanishing into the misty rain and the rushing crowd. Lu Ruyan collapsed onto the cold, damp ground, her eyes fixed on the tiny, transparent bottle in her hand. Fear, like a cold, venomous snake, coiled around her heart, squeezing tighter and tighter. Chiguan Jia. He was still watching her. He had never let her go. Like a cat toying with a mouse. Just as she teetered on the brink of total collapse, he had tossed her another sugar-coated poison pill. Pain relief. Highly effective? She remembered the bald thug's words. A diseased gift. And these pale blue pills, what were they? A poison to bring her immediate release? Or another gift to make her life a living hell? The tide of addiction surged within her body once more violent than before. It felt like countless ants were gnawing inside her bones. The excruciating pain in her lower body, the burning in her lungs, the stinging in her broken wrist. All the temporarily forgotten pain instantly came roaring back with 100 times the intensity. "Ah!" Lu Ruyan let out a shrill scream, curling her body into a ball as she convulsed and rolled wildly. Mucus, tears, and saliva streamed down her face uncontrollably. In agony, she bashed her head against the cold ground. Amidst the torment of pain and despair, those few pale blue pills in her palm radiated an increasingly intense, lethal temptation. Pain relief. Take it and the pain stops. Highly effective. Brother Jia said so. Take it and be free. The devil's whispers echoed madly in her chaotic mind. "No, I can't take it. It's poison. He wants me dead." A remaining shred of reason screamed. Take it, and the pain will stop. Death is fine too. Death is a release. Addiction and agony tempted her. Two voices tore wildly at her mind. She gripped the bottle so tight her fingernails almost dug into the plastic. Her body trembled violently from the extreme pain and inner struggle. Finally, as another wave of heart-rending pain struck, her remaining reason was utterly crushed. The last trace of clarity in her eyes was drowned out by pain and craving. With her one good hand, trembling, she unscrewed the tiny bottle with immense difficulty. She poured out a pale blue pill. She stared at the tiny pill, radiating the light of hope, her eyes hollow and ravenous. Then, without hesitation, she shoved it into her cracked, filth-stained mouth. There was no water. She summoned all her strength and dry-swallowed it. The pill slid down her throat, bringing a strange, cold, burning sensation. She leaned against the cold, damp wall, waiting for release or deeper pain. Time ticked by second. At first, she felt nothing. The pain continued to rage. Gradually, a wave of intense dizziness hit her. The world before her began to spin and blur. An indescribable, violent nausea surged up from her stomach. She collapsed onto the ground, unable to control herself, and vomited violently. She threw up nothing but acid and green bile. The dizziness grew stronger. The world spun wildly. She felt her body become incredibly heavy, yet simultaneously weightless and floating. Her consciousness felt like it had been cast into a scorching furnace, then thrown into a freezing abyss. Countless bizarre, twisted, and fractured images flashed madly before her eyes. There was Chiguan Jie's cold smile. The moment Chun-Li fell from the building, the image of her father coughing up blood, the leering faces of the thugs, and the mad look in her mother's eyes. She mumbled unconsciously, her body convulsing and twitching violently beyond her control. Saliva drooled uncontrollably from the corner of her mouth. Her pupils began to dilate. This wasn't pain relief. This wasn't a painkiller at all. This was a potent hallucinogen designed to destroy the mind. Or a poison laced with other lethal ingredients. Ziguan Ye. He didn't just want her to suffer physically. He wanted to utterly destroy her sanity. Let her become a true madwoman, a monster utterly lost in hallucinations and agony, for whom living is worse than death. Yeah, Brother Jia. Amidst violent convulsions and terrifying visions, Lu Ruyan unconsciously murmured this name. A twisted, eerie expression surfaced on her face, a blend of extreme terror and morbid dependency. Struggling and trembling, she summoned her last shred of remaining consciousness. She fumbled around, poured out the few remaining pale blue pills from a bottle, and shoved them all in her mouth at once. Since there is no escape, then let me sink completely, before the even more violent, horrific storm of hallucinations brought on by the drugs could swallow her whole. The corner of her mouth seemed to twitch upward with extreme difficulty and distortion. It was a smile, uglier than crying, filled with endless agony and madness. The deep autumn wind swept up withered yellow leaves, swirling them past a cold, sleek black marble tombstone, the grave of a beloved wife, Lu Ruyan. Under the gloomy sky, the 6 gilded characters reflected a cold, hard sheen. A bouquet of fresh, pure white lilies lay before the headstone. Morning dew still clung to the petals, which trembled slightly in the biting wind, releasing a desolate fragrance. Chiguan Jie stood tall and straight as a pine, dressed in a well-tailored black cashmere coat. He stood quietly before the grave. In his hand, there was no incense, candles, or spirit money, only a glass of red wine. The deep ruby liquid swirled gently in the crystal glass, looking like coagulated blood. There was no sorrow on his face, no anger, not even a ripple of emotion. Only an extreme, profound calm. His deep eyes were like 2 frigid pools, bottomless, reflecting the cold inscription on the stone. 3 months had passed since Lu Ruyan had disappeared completely into the rain by that subway ventilation shaft. Chiguan Jie knew her ending all too well. After swallowing that bottle of potent hallucinogens, Lu Ruyan had gone completely mad. When patrol officers found her, she was stark naked, dancing wildly amidst the busy traffic, screaming, cursing at the air, and giggling foolishly. Her lower body was ulcerated and oozing pus. Her severed wrist was black with infection, and her lungs were severely compromised. The blood she coughed up stained the filth on her chest red. She was involuntarily committed to a public psychiatric hospital with the worst conditions in the suburbs. No family to sign for her, no identification, just a number. In a place like that, the fate of a penniless, raving lunatic with no next of kin was predictable. The sustained, powerful hallucinogens had destroyed her brain. She could not even control her most basic physiological functions. The severe infection in her lower body triggered sepsis. The necrosis in her severed wrist and her lung ailment deteriorated rapidly due to the wretched environment and lack of effective treatment. Less than a month after admission, on a freezing winter night, she died of multiple organ failure. Before she died, she was reduced to a bag of bones, radiating a foul stench. Her empty eyes stared at the ceiling as she ceaselessly, slurringly chanted names. Brother Jia, Brother Jia, Dad, Mom, like an absurd and desolate requiem. Her corpse was wheeled into the freezing morgue. A few days later, following the protocol for unclaimed bodies, she was sent to the crematorium and reduced to a handful of ash. There was no funeral, no mourning, not even a decent urn. It was Qiguan Jie who sent someone to the crematorium to claim that handful of ash with the cheapest white porcelain jar and bury it in this expensive cemetery. He erected the tombstone. He used the title Beloved Wife. How ironic. Qiguan Jie raised his glass to the cold headstone and gave it a gentle swirl. The scarlet liquid rippled in an elegant arc. Rian, he began, his voice deep and steady, as if catching up with an old friend. The scenery here is nice. It's quiet, warmer than under a bridge, cleaner than a garbage dump. You should like it, shouldn't you? The cold wind brushed through the treetops, making a sobbing sound, as if in response. He took a sip of the wine, mellow, slightly astringent, with the aroma of oak and a lingering finish. The cold liquid slid down his throat, yet it ignited something dormant and scorching within his blood. The scenes of the past 6 months seemed to flash before his eyes. That night on their wedding anniversary, feeling the cold ring engraved with LNC in her bag, seeing the fresh hickey on the side of her neck, fighting back the churning in his stomach, and smiling as he helped her wipe off the foundation. In the study late at night, typing the command for Spider to destroy the Li Feng technology servers. The cold clicking of the mouse while synthesizing that intimate photo that detonated the internet. Watching her smash her phone and scream in a breakdown on the surveillance monitor. Listening to the breaking news of Li Feng Technology's collapse on the financial report. Receiving the call from Brother Long, confirming Chun Li was critically injured in the car accident. Watching her desperate wails on the surveillance feed as she witnessed her father vomit blood and die. Receiving the encrypted message from the gang leader replying, "Job well done." Hearing the news that she had contracted a filthy disease, sunk into a sea of drugs, and finally died completely insane. Every scene was as clear as yesterday. Every destruction landed precisely within his expectations, or even exceeded them. Was there anger? Once there was. At the moment the betrayal was discovered, that fury was enough to incinerate reason. Was there pain? Perhaps a trace. When the 7-year facade of warmth was torn apart, that pain was sharp and fleeting. Was there emptiness? No, not a single bit. There is only one feeling, a feeling becoming clearer, more surging and purer. Satisfaction. A cold, absolute, all-controlling, unparalleled satisfaction of crushing the traitor and her entire world into fine powder. Watching Chun-Li transform from a high-spirited financial upstart into a dying prisoner in the ICU, finally perishing on a cold detention center bed. Satisfying. Watching Liu Jianbang being driven by forged debts to a heart attack, vomiting blood and dying on the spot. Satisfying. Watching Zhao Yufan suffer a breakdown from the shock, go completely mad, and be locked away in a sanitarium. Satisfying. Watching Liu Rian fall for being a high and mighty, exquisite wife to a filthy maggot wriggling in a trash heap, gang-raped, infected with dirty diseases and drug addiction, finally rotting away in madness and agony. Satisfying. Every step of the revenge stepped precisely on their most painful spots. Every destruction brought a deeper sense of control and a stronger intensity of pleasure. Watching enemies struggle in vain within the web of destruction he wove, finally falling into the bottomless abyss, that pleasure of overriding everything and dominating fate like a god, was unparalleled. He planned all of this. He manipulated every link in the chain. He watched the actors walk step by step toward their predetermined, destructive finale according to the script he wrote, just like appreciating a magnificent play. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Qi Guanjie took another sip of wine. The cold liquid only made the flame, named Successful Revenge, in his chest burn more fiercely and purely. He leaned forward slightly and slowly, evenly poured the remaining red wine from the glass onto the bouquet of pure white lilies. The crimson liquid soaked the pure white petals, flowing down the veins, dripping onto the cold tombstone base, and spreading into a dark red patch, like dry blood. The interweaving of white and red, the fusion of purity and filth, composed a scene that was bizarre yet poignantly beautiful. This glass is to you. Qi Guanjie's voice remained steady, yet carried a strange, cold temperature. To our 7 years, and to you, for the lessons you taught me. He straightened up, looking at Lu Rian's name on the tombstone, at the lilies stained by red wine, and at this cemetery symbolizing eternal rest, yet burying endless pain. A very faint, cold, yet undeniably real smile finally surfaced on the corners of his tightly pressed lips. That smile was like a flame beneath ice, carrying the ultimate satisfaction after destruction and a cold pleasure of scrutinizing his own power. Game over, he said softly, as if announcing the most natural fact. Then, he turned around and strode away. The hem of his black overcoat sketched a cold, hard arc. His steps were steady and unhurried. Leather shoes stepped on the clean stone path of the cemetery, making clear, rhythmic sounds. Click, 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 like the drum beats of a victor. He did not look back at the cold tombstone or the wine-soaked lilies. The world behind him, those betrayals, pains, destructions, and deaths, was left thoroughly in that gloomy graveyard, like dust scattered by the wind. He walked out of the cemetery. Sunlight pierced through the clouds, falling on his upright back, plating it with a rim of golden light. Ahead lay the open road belonging to the victor. The wind grew stronger. It curled up dead leaves and swept past the bouquet of gradually withering, blood-stained lilies on the tombstone.